Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto has the gift of fire council bashing harem. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Mr. Red Hex, link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. Fated Change. My first month, I can't believe I already got through my first month of the Shinobi Academy. Naruto thought happily as he dug into his second bowl of congratulatory ramen. He was finally taking steps towards his dream. His dream of acknowledgement as a person instead of an untouchable pariah that for most of his life people thought of him as. Looking down at his reflection in the ramen broth, Naruto couldn't help but smile. He had finally taken a step in the right direction. Well, who would have thought someone could get so worked up over 1 month of school? It warms my heart to see someone taking their studies so seriously, Tucci said from behind the shop's kitchen window. Naruto blushed a bit from embarrassment and the old man just laughed aloud at the boy's expense before whipping him up another helping of his famous ramen. 3 bowls later, the small academy student got up from his favorite seat in the ramen stand before paying the man in coupons. It was a sad truth, but they were the only way he could afford to eat sometimes. Not that Tucci and his daughter minded that, hell they would have let Naruto eat there freely, hadn't the boy been so adamant about paying. He's stubborn and forgetful too. Naruto, come back, you forgot some of your coupons. The old ramen chef thought fondly as he hollered after the blonde, but it was too late, the boy had already gone speeding off like a miniature typhoon. Pocketing the small crumpled pieces of paper, Tucci decided to just put it on the boy's tab and call it a night. The alleys of Konohagakure had become like a second home to Naruto. He not only knew all of the shortcuts through, over, and between them, but they also offered a safe haven from the many cold glares he received when he traveled out amongst the open populace of the village. Today had been a good day in particular because he already accomplished 2 of his 3 needs. One was his full stomach and the second was the fact that he was well on his way towards his dream. Now to settle the third thing for today, pranking, Naruto finished aloud before a devious smirk crossed his features. He didn't know how to explain it, maybe it was embedded in his DNA somewhere or it was his desperate cry for attention, but Naruto knew that nothing compared to the adrenaline rush he would feel after pulling a prank on an unsuspecting target. Perching himself atop one of the shadowy rooftops that oversaw his secret kingdom, Naruto scanned the alleyways below with a truly foxy expression before a flicker of movement caught his attention. Turning his focus onto the scene below, Naruto watched 3 men in black quickly follow behind the thing that had first caught his attention, and Naruto went into what he liked to call his prank mode, compressing his chakra into a tight, nearly non-existent ball. Naruto had learned in class that day the ability, which he had perfected over years of pranking and now came almost naturally to him, was something not even most jonin could do with an incredible amount of practice. The thought of him being more skilled than most jonin made him swell with pride, and with that thought in mind, he looked down into the dead-end alleyway while formulating a prank to top all of his pranks. Now, what should I do? I could drop 3 trash cans on their heads and call it a night, but that's so boring. Maybe something like a stink bomb, but I don't have the time to prepare one without Hinata. Naruto gasped out in mid-thought when he noticed a strange little girl was squeezing herself into a ball in the corner, trying to disappear from the sight of the 3 men surrounding her. Remembering the girl from his first day of class, Naruto recalled that she had a timid aura and whenever anyone asked her a question, she became a stuttering heap. In his never-ending attempt to make friends and gain the recognition from everyone around him, Naruto stepped in and answered the question for her despite being completely wrong. The girl's reaction was gracious though, and Naruto figured that she was at least someone that he could befriend. What is she doing here? In a dark, back alley like this? From what I remember, she's the Hyuga heiress, closest thing to royalty Konoha has, and as Naruto recalled silently, he turned a curious ear to the conversation below him. All ideas for making the men his newest victims vanished. Well, what do we have here, boys? It seems that the little Hyuga princess wandered away from daddy's bodyguards and found herself in a heap of trouble, one of the men said, before laughing aloud at his own joke. This guy was obviously the leader because the other 2 didn't have the brains to figure out when to start laughing or when to stop. The leader soon grew irritated and his killing intent began to leak out silently around him, cutting off his companion's awkward laughing in an instant. From above, however, Naruto immediately noticed something strange about the guy as soon as he started leaking his murderous aura. What's with this guy? Since when did his aura change so suddenly? Naruto questioned silently while keeping his eyes peeled on the man in question. For as long as he could remember, Naruto had been able to read the moods and auras of people without as much as a second glance. It was because of this that he trusted Tucci and Am, because whenever he looked at them, all he ever saw was an aura of kindness radiating from them. However, this guy's aura was angry, chaotic, and positively reeked of horrible intentions. Watching as the aura flared up, Naruto knew from experience that the man was about to attack, so without a second thought, Naruto dropped down on the unsuspecting offender and planted his foot squarely on the back of the guy's head. The dark-haired male stumbled for a moment, but his two companions quickly caught him. After quickly regaining his balance, he shrugged off his two lackeys before turning a pissed-off glare onto Naruto. "Where the hell did this kid come from? Hey, wait, isn't that the Kyuubi brat? How the hell did you sneak up on us?" the man asked, while making sure not to mention the Kyuubi or any of the unusual traits that gave Naruto. The blonde just smirked, however, to hide the tightly bottled sense of excitement that he was getting from a job well done. "I don't know, maybe because you guys have shitty sensory awareness," Naruto fired back cockily, causing the Hyuga heiress to gasp at his foul language. "Oh yeah, I forgot she's from the high society, only time they cuss up there is if someone gets the stick pulled from their asses," Naruto joked silently as he eyed the three men in front of him. From what he could tell by just looking at them that the leader seemed to be the only one here with any harmful intent, the other two just seemed to be followers who couldn't think for themselves. True to his assumption, the leader was the first one to try to muscle his way past him. "Boy Gaki, this has nothing to do with you, the little Hyuga bitch ran into me on my way home. I don't take kindly to unprovoked attacks, especially when there is no apology involved," the leader said before his two friends backed him up from the side. Naruto stared at the man the whole time he was talking, all the while reading the man's aura as he spoke. "Well, I think you're full of bullshit. There's no way someone like Hinata would run into someone purposely, and even if she ran into you accidentally, which I'm sure she didn't, she's the type of person that would try to break their back for your forgiveness," Naruto stated defiantly, despite only knowing the girl for a month. Unknowingly to Naruto, his words had lifted the downtrodden girl's spirits and boosted her low self-esteem just a little. "No one has ever said something like that about me. Thank you, Naruto-kun," Hinata uttered quietly while watching the scene in front of her rapidly unfold. "That damn Gaki is starting to piss me off," the ringleader thought angrily while looking in the 7-year-old's eyes. His blue eyes seemed to twinkle with an inner fire like nothing he had ever seen. It was as if the brat's eyes weren't looking at him at all, but through him and into his heart. Little did he know that he was only half right. Naruto smirked when he saw the familiar side of uncertainty flicker across his opponent's face and aura. Now that the seeds of doubt were in his opponent's thoughts, the game of deception and misdirection would be all too easy now. Forming a quick seal, Naruto found out from a bit of after-school practice that the seemingly impossible bunshin could easily be done if he just compressed his chakra as he was doing now. Instantly, 10 Naruto appeared, each flanking another's back in a bowling pin array. Locking eyes with the leader once again, Naruto's smirk widened as he and his 9 other clones charged at the men. Amongst the chaos, Hinata watched silently as the clones danced merrily around the men's blows, all the while taunting the men with their casual attitudes and sly grins. "What's with this kid? I can't tell his chakra apart from the copies." One of the less intelligent teens cried out as he swung at another one of the clones. Growing frustrated, the leader found that trying to hit one of the Narutos was akin to swatting a fly. A fly that was hyperactive, taunting, and knew how to push all your buttons. In fact, the clones were so distracting that neither he nor his companions noticed the near-silent poofing of a Kawarimi. How could he be this strong after only a month at the academy? Hinata thought to herself as she watched the clones continue to dance around the bumbling group of men. Letting herself look onwards in awe at the boy's distraction, so much that all thoughts of escape eluded her until she felt a hand clamp down on her shoulder. Instinct kicked in and Hinata inhaled deeply to scream, but a hand clamped down over her mouth. "Whatever you do, don't scream," a familiar voice whispered quietly into her ear from behind the trash can. Looking over her shoulder to confirm on whom it was, Hinata felt a rush of relief when her eyes met Naruto's cerulean eyes. "Hey, go ahead and use a bit of chakra to escape onto the rooftops, I'll keep them busy while you get away," Naruto whispered before releasing the girl and watching her jump up onto the roofs without any problems. Watching the girl slip out of sight, Naruto turned back to make sure that the three stooges were still busy before figuring out what he should do next. "Well, it seems it's time for me to make my escape," Naruto thought as he patted himself on the back for a job well done. However, as soon as he was making plans for his great escape, the chakra supporting the bunshin unraveled, dispelling all of the clones at once. Turning his attention back to the three young men, Naruto noticed that the ringleader's aura was now a deep rage. "That's gonna cost you dearly, Gaki," the dark-haired male stated angrily while cracking his knuckles. "Oh really, so you and your two cronies are gonna teach me a lesson? You couldn't even beat a pack of bunshin before their timer went out," Naruto taunted, trying desperately to distract the teenager somehow so that he could deceive or misdirect him. However, his attempt was to no avail, since there wasn't a single flicker of uncertainty or doubt in the young man's aura. Tough words for someone who relies on tricks to fight his battles, the teen shot back, now fully focused on Naruto. The blonde had no illusions that he could beat 3 teenagers at once, but if he could manage to distract the leader, then there was a chance he could get away. "Hey, they fooled you, didn't they? Naruto countered while trying the seals for another Kawarimi. If I can just time this right, I may be able to switch places with one of the trash cans behind them and disappear amongst a pack of clones. Naruto planned as he completed his hand seals, just as the man's foot collided with his stomach. Thunk. The loud clank of the letter's foot crashing into the trash can drowned out the sound of Naruto poofing into existence. Rushing for the exit, Naruto finished the seals for his 20 bunch and quickly surrounded him. I'm home free now baby, Naruto thought happily, but just as he was about to cross the threshold into the open Konoha streets, he was yanked back in by the collar. Turning his head upward, Naruto locked gazes with two menacing red eyes. Thrashing and twisting with all his might, Naruto didn't stop struggling, even as a rain of blows hit him from all directions. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of painful torture, Naruto felt himself hurled through the air like a cheap rag doll before falling into a heap of garage. Bruised, bloodied, and soaked with trash water, Naruto looked up at the three who did this to him with eyes still burning with that great inner fire. Peering directly at the group leader, Naruto made eye contact with the teenager, startling the man with the intensity in his eyes. What's with those eyes? Why is it as if he's looking down on me? Judging me? Hey, stop looking at me like that Gaki, before I take your eyes out as well, and remember this well, because this is how you will always be, trash at the feet of greatness. Nothing, not those Hyuga bitches' eyes nor your eyes, can ever compare to the eyes of the Uchiha Sharingan, the man said while looking down on the boy with a blazing one-tama Sharingan. Burning that, along with the pattern emblazoned on the group of teens' backs, Naruto stared angrily at the men's backs as they walked away, leaving him in the trash. I swear that all those bastards are gonna pay, Naruto swore angrily as he pulled his beaten body out of the trash. His anger was rolling off him in waves, and since no one was around to call him monster or demon, he didn't care. At least, that's what he thought, because little did the young boy know there was another spectator at the show, one with a fully developed Sharingan and an interested glint in his eye. Just after dusk, Naruto sat in the midst of empty ramen cups and dirty clothes going over his plan once again. On paper, it was simple. Sneak in, trash the place, sneak out, but in practice it would be a whole other thing. Luckily, he had all the right resources. First, he managed to catch Iruka just as he left the academy for the day. Gleaning as much knowledge he could get about the Sharingan, Naruto tried to be as vague and innocent as possible about why he was so curious about it all of a sudden. Iruka was one of the few people that gave off a trusting aura, so lying to him had turned out to be harder than Naruto thought. But if he knew what I was planning to do, he would go all mother hen on me, Naruto thought, recalling the argument he and Iruka had gotten into over the bruises on his faces and arms. He had told Iruka that it was a bit of new training he was trying out, and he wasn't exactly lying, because saving Hinata had taken every bit of ninja knowledge he had learned to pull it off. Building off step 1, Naruto, with a little fast talking, got Iruka to use his teacher's clearance to pull up a few of the village's maps and schematics from the library. Studying the maps alongside Iruka was tricky, because if he seemed too interested in the Uchiha district's layout, the academy professor would know something was up. So in a roundabout way, Naruto began formulating the quickest path from his apartment to the Uchiha complex and back. Take the alleyways there and the main road back. If someone tries to come after me, I can look as innocent as possible, Naruto reminded himself while changing into his stealthiest set of clothing. Even though he had scored the highest on the stealth portion of the entrance exam in the entire academy, upper classes included, he figured against an enemy that had a world-renowned Dojutsu, opting for full black apparel would be the best bet. Slipping on the pants and shirt, Naruto wrapped his forearms and shins with black gauze before pulling his hood up. He was dressed in the classic ninja attire, only armed with a set of kunai he had received when passing the academy entrance exam. Despite being armed, he wasn't going there to fight anyone. No, these kunai have a much bigger part to play in this revenge, Naruto thought as he carefully placed a few bottles of spray paint he had been saving into his outfit's hidden sleeves. Grabbing his black rucksack, Naruto then double-checked every detail of his plan down to the proverbial T before making his way to the door, and once he gripped the handle, trepidation finally set in. Once I set foot out of this apartment, there's no turning back, Naruto told himself as a final desperate ploy of his forgotten conscience. Leaving well enough alone was his safest and most secure bet, however, if he did that then he wouldn't be Uzumaki Naruto. Reaching up to his hood, Naruto pulled a thin flap of fabric across the lower half of his face, covering it behind a black veil, before stepping through the threshold and into the night. I finally did it. I finally hit all the bull's eyes on Itachi Nai-san's shuriken core, Sasuke thought proudly as he made his way home in the night. It had been a month since he had started the academy and he was already improving rapidly. He had been faithfully working on his shuriken skills as his brother instructed, and it was only a few days ago that his father had actually acknowledged him. I'm a man now and a full-fledged Uchiha capable of using the Gakakyu no Jutsu, Grand Fireball technique. Father realizes that now and even said it. He even said as expected of my son, Sasuke thought, uttering the last part ever so quietly as he rounded the corner into the Uchiha district. He was late, and the full moon sitting on the horizon was proof enough of that, but he was sure that his mother wouldn't mind it this once, not after she heard what he accomplished. Whipping out his shuriken, Sasuke decided that one more volley wouldn't hurt and that it would only take a second to retrieve the lost projectiles after thrown. Scanning the area around him for suitable targets, ones worthy enough to test his skills, Sasuke spotted 4 telephone poles surrounding him from all 4 of the cardinal directions. Okay, just like a Nikki did it, Sasuke chanted before launching 2 shuriken in opposite directions. The first volley's trajectory was aimed wide, flying directly in between 2 poles, however Sasuke was done yet, and with unparalleled precision, he fired off another volley aimed directly for the first set. The second set of shuriken flew twice as fast as the first, and in perfect timing, the metal stars collided with the first set, altering their trajectory drastically, so that instead of flying between the poles, they all veered directly into a pole. Thunk, 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 Naruto. Sasuke exclaimed aloud when his gaze met that of the blue-eyed shadowy figure, illuminated by the pale glow of the moon sitting on the horizon behind him. He knew that his aim was true, as he had spent much the last week breaking down the technique into a science, before practicing it enough to make it almost instinct, and the blonde served as a perfect explanation as to why his last shuriken missed. I knew there is no way I could have missed. I would have known it before I even released the shuriken, but why is it that Naruto is dressed that way? Sasuke asked before his eyes trailed after his quickly disappearing classmate. However, little did the boy know that there was another speculator watching the show, one whose eyes glinted crimson before disappearing from the scene. Shit, shit, shit. I can't believe someone already saw me, and by a person who recognized me no less. Naruto cursed internally as he hid in the shadows of one of the buildings. I suppose it would happen, eventually, Naruto figured once his heart stopped racing. Everything had been going smoothly, he had managed to stay hidden from the patrolling Anbu on the rooftops by using the alleys as he planned. However, once he reached the border of the Uchiha district would the true test of his stealth begin. The closely packed building resided in the heart of the village, and the alleyways that formed because of them now became a place with wider, fenced paths, completely void of all sense of cover. In short, it was the virtual no man's land for a street rat like him. He had taken a gamble and lost, but there was one bright side. Sasuke may have recognized me, but from what I know of the Uchiha clan, they don't live in one compound like the Hyugas do, but more like have their own living district. Sasuke's father is the head of the clan, so he must live in the head's home. Now, assuming that Sasuke doesn't feel the need to tell his parents that he's seen me near the complex, I'll just have to hit his house last, and I may still be able to pull this off, Naruto figured as he went over the timing in his head again. The times were all figurative, but if he didn't run into too many difficulties, he estimated that he would be finished with his revenge just before the sun rose. Plenty of time for Sasuke-chan to fall asleep and for me to finish, Naruto assured himself before breaking into his first victim's room. Opening his black rucksack, Naruto couldn't help but smirk when he opened his sleeping victim's drawer and started filling the bag up with the man's wardrobe. I have to make sure to thank Jiji-san for getting me this bag, Naruto noted as the seals on the bag began to glow ever so lightly. He had gotten the bag as a birthday present from the Hokage, and it was specially sealed so that it was connected to its own summon storage system. Its intended purpose was for Naruto to store all his valuables if he ever was forced to move, or more realistically, flee his home, but for now it was filling a slightly more juvenile role. Stuffing the bag with the man's clothes, Naruto chuckled as he put the underwear into a separate compartment and made his way to the next house, all the while leaving a trail of clean clothing behind him. Hours later, okay, now for the hardest part yet, the head's house, Naruto whispered aloud before entering the building. He had a few close calls that night touring through the Uchiha complex, but luckily for him, he wasn't just stealthy, but sly as a fox as well. That night alone, Naruto couldn't count how many times the henge, Bunshin, or Kawarimi had saved his ass. But I do feel sorry for the guy I switched with when I ran into the Chunin walking in after duty, Naruto thought as he recalled the scene of a very tired shinobi walking into his bedroom to see his brother and wife in the same futon. Luckily, for Naruto, he had gone with his first instincts and used a replacement instead of a transformation. Otherwise, he may have ended up thrown against the wall by one pissed-off husband. Putting the thoughts of domestic violence aside, Naruto made sure that his chakra hadn't expanded from its compressed form. Because, the last thing I need is to be caught here with a trail of the clan's clean clothes behind me and all of their underwear in my backpack, Naruto commented as he entered the first room. The first thing Naruto noticed was the room was empty, which was then followed by the thought, how can someone live in here? Surveying the room right and left, Naruto stared at the room in disbelief. It wasn't that the room was dirty, no, it was quite the opposite. The room was so clean that there were hardly any signs of life. Hadn't it been for the neatly tucked futon in the corner and the perfectly arranged cases of kunai and shuriken beside it, Naruto would have mistaken the room for a storage room or guest bedroom. Quickly putting aside the weird feeling he was getting from the room, Naruto quickly went to work, making his way over to the closet where, once again, everything from the shirts hanging on the hangers to the row of drawers on the bottom were neatly arranged. Taking an armful of shirts and pants from the closet, Naruto threw them haphazardly on the ground in an attempt to show some semblance that life resided in the room. Now with his own lifestyle preferences abated, Naruto went to the underwear drawer to acquire more supplies for his master plan. Opening the drawer hastily, Naruto was shocked when his eyes fell on a single splash of color out of the nearly monochromatic bedroom. Plucking the orange book out from between two fan emblazoned briefs, Naruto immediately opened the brightly colored book to find that his name was the first thing he saw. I'm definitely going to read this now, Naruto thought to himself before pocketing the brightly colored Icha Paradise in one of his hidden pockets before leaving the room in a mess. Once all traces of the blonde were gone, a figure appeared from its hiding spot along the wall. Casting his eyes over the messy floor in disgust, the man resisted the scowl that was itching its way across his face and instead turned his attention to the figure that was appearing before him. Has the boy been detected yet? The figure asked as its form flickered slightly in Itachi's eyes. Itachi felt slightly insulted when he realized that his companion was projecting his form from a remote location and that the man didn't trust him enough to meet him in person. However, given the man's history, his trust in humanity had died along with his mortality when he plucked his brother's eyes from their sockets long ago. No, Madara-sama, the boy is how you stated, crude as a neophyte shinobi with his execution, but cunning and perceptive as well. However, there is one exception to the information you presented to me. The boy is able to suppress his chakra to almost absolute nothingness, and had it not been for these eyes, I doubt I would have been able to react in time when he opened the door on me, Itachi reported, having bowed down to one knee while talking to the man. Praise my apprentice, I feel as though the boy's appearance is an omen and an ill omen at that. A fox's best traits are its cunning and trickery, and this boy has obviously been blessed by the Kyuubi itself, otherwise, how would he be able to use such advanced abilities? I believe that now isn't the time to act, as acting against a fox in the midst of its vengeances has never been a wise decision, Madara uttered softly, staring the Uchiha in the eye. In the depths of the boy's obsidian gaze was the roaring flame of ambition, a trait he and his brother shared before he took his brother's light. His ambition will be the death of me, so now is not the time to proceed with our plan. Patience will be our reward tonight, in hopes that we will achieve victory another day, Madara finished aloud, talking to both himself and his young apprentice. Hi Madara-sama, I will keep an eye on the young fox for the time being. His involvement tonight was not unwarranted and I will see if I can play it to our advantage, Itachi replied before the flickering being in front of him disappeared, leaving only a residue mist of chakra in its wake. Activating his Sharingan anew, Itachi disappeared into the walls as well, returning to his duty of monitoring the young fox once again. A little ways away, Naruto crept up to the next room, unaware of the conversation that had transpired only a few feet behind him. However, scheming Uchiha were the last thing on his mind, instead Naruto's sole focus was his next victim. Sliding the screen door ever so quietly, Naruto entered in the likeness of a wraith by not once making a sound. However, as he made his way to the closet, Naruto peered down towards the futon to see whose room he was pillaging, only to find out that he was in Sasuke's room. A sudden wave of anxiety rushed over him as he looked down on the peacefully sleeping boy. Do I owe him this one Passover? He has never been truly spitefully toward me, and it's because of him staying quiet that I even got this far, Naruto reasoned as he stared down on the sleeping Uchiha. His morals were warring once again with his natural prankster, citing that Sasuke had inadvertently protected him from being found before his plan even got started. However, the more mischievous side of him took no prisoners, and Sasuke would just have to be a causality of war. Besides, a prank has never hurt anybody, Naruto relented before swiping the boy's underwear, but it was just as he was about to move towards the boy's closet for more ammo when Jinyu struck him mid-step. You better appreciate this, Sasuke, I'm cutting you a break, Naruto said, barely above a whisper as he dug in his backpack. Searching in the nearly limitless space seal inside his rucksack, Naruto didn't even bother suppressing the incredibly maniacal grin before stuffing his break into Sasuke's empty drawers. There's your Passover, Sasuke, enjoy. Unfortunately, Naruto's jocund whisper was just loud enough to stir the unconscious Uchiha, and in a groggy voice Sasuke asked, Passover, what are you doing here, Itachi? Did you wander into my room by accident again? Kami-sama. I barely managed to get that henge off in time, Naruto ranted mentally, not trusting his voice to persuade the young Uchiha that he really was his brother. Nodding shakily, Naruto thanked Kami that it was dark, otherwise Sasuke would have seen his otherwise aloof brother sweating like a hog next in line for the slaughter. Whatever, hurry up and get out of here, Nikki, or I'll tell mom you were trying to scare me with the eye-stealing Oni bit again, Sasuke sleepily threatened as he rolled over and went back to sleep. Letting out a breath, Naruto didn't release the henge until he was safely out of Sasuke's room and at his final destination. The Uchiha Council Chamber, the room where all the ordinances of the clan are passed down from leader to follower, from elder to newborn, Naruto mused, regurgitating Iruka's exact words from earlier that day. Upon entering, Naruto realized it was less secure than expected, perhaps because he was in the heart of the Uchiha complex, the proverbial belly of the beast, or because Naruto had gotten the guard that was supposed to be on duty knocked out for sleeping with his brother's wife, not that he knew that, of course. Opening up his backpack, Naruto commenced in laying out all the clothes he collected in his little scavenger hunt around the compound. Noting the practically sweaty smell emitted from all of the clothes, Naruto figured that the dirty clothes somehow mixed with the clean ones for hours, giving them that hauntingly disgusting aroma. Smells like shinobi's feet mixed with sweat and grim, absolutely perfect, Naruto finished aloud as he spread the clothes out all over the council chamber, making sure to leave no cushion, mat, or table unmarked. Now for the icing on the cake, Naruto added as he made his way outside. Catching the time out of the corner of his eye, Naruto saw that he had about 20 minutes before the sun would rise and the Uchiha would start their day. Acting with cautious haste, Naruto hurried to the main courtyard, all the while digging into his backpack for the side compartment that housed their underwear. Finding the spot just as he reached the main courtyard, Naruto dumped the underwear out in an unceremonious way, causing a foul smell to linger in the air. Like before, the dirty clothes had mixed with the clean, resulting in a foul smell. However, this smell, being the combination of the sweatiest part of the human body along with the thinnest piece of clothing worn on the body, was by far the foulest. The smell was so strong that only a description such as sweaty balls left out on a hot summer day or an 11 on a scale of 1 to 10 could attempt to describe the rancid odor. "Dear Kami, what have I unleashed?" Naruto asked humorously before pulling out a stack of explosive notes that had the kanji for dud slapped over the seals in bold red ink. They had been sticking to his clothes after the bastard Uchihas threw him in the garbage, and Naruto found it only fitting that they got back to their rightful owners. True to their labeling, the explosive tags were defective, and once ignited what should have resulted in an explosion was only a feeble sparking, barely large enough to match that of the weakest Kaiten jutsu. Therefore, instead of blowing the pile of fetid clothes to the sky, Naruto supposed the Uchiha would have to settle from picking their clothes in a cloud of rancid-smelling smoke. Leaving slowly burning stacks of explosive duds on the large mound of clothes, Naruto turned and left. His righteous crusade for justice was complete and with just enough time to spare for him to make it to class on time. Fugaku was dreaming, and dreaming was a rare luxury to the aged and battle-weary Uchiha head. Maybe, it was because after a while, the images of battles and bodies would all fade into black as the mind tries to repress his guilt manifested in gruesome images of his past. Or maybe it was just because he had achieved everything he wanted and there was hardly anything that carried his fancy long enough to become a dream. However, the fact still remained that the most influential man in the Uchiha loved to dream, and now a foul smell was interrupting one. Slowly opening his eyes, Fugaku grunted when the first rays of the sun's light hit his eyes. The man surveyed the room, squinting, trying his hardest to detect the source of the offending smell. Cherry blossoms, no, that's Mikoto. Fresh pine, no, that's the new flooring, and sweaty shinobi Kami, not again, Fugaku thought as his eyes landed on the flickering light behind the door panel that blocked his room from the main courtyard. Hurrying out of bed, the man made his way to the door with his startled wife behind him. The sounds of coughing, arguing, and general chaos filtered into his room through the anti-sound seals placed on the door panels. Reluctantly sliding the door open, the Uchiha had nearly gagged when the thick layer of dark smoke hit his lungs full force. It was indeed the smell that had been burned into his memory by one of the Yondaime Hokage's more notorious pranks. Who the hell? Why did someone burn malodorous clothing in the main courtyard? Fugaku asked angrily as he activated his Sharingan and cast his eyes over the smoky pit that had once been his atrium. Finding no strange chakra signatures through the smoke, Fugaku began to entertain the thought that this was no accident and rather a strategically thought-out attack on his clan. From there, a magnitude of thoughts began surging forth for the recesses of the head's mind, ranging from as far as, is this a declaration of war and who could have possibly been brave enough to attack the Uchiha? But that thought in mind, Fugaku returned to his room and retrieved his formal robes. He and his family would be taking a trip to the Hokage's office. Meanwhile, Iruka surveyed the rows of students before him, noticing not one, not two, but three anomalies happening all at once. Blinking once to make sure he wasn't dreaming, Iruka let out a sigh when he realized that he indeed had a seemingly calm and quiet Uzumaki Naruto sitting in his seat peacefully while reading a small orange book that he pulled out once he completed his quiz. This can't be happening. I'm not one to look a gift horse in the mouth, but a docile Uzumaki Naruto is like the Kyuubi becoming Fire Country's nation mascot. Iruka ranted silently while letting out another sigh. Not only was Naruto acting strangely, but also both Sasuke and Hinata were out at the same time. It wasn't much of a connection, but as it stood, both clans heavily endorsed the ninja lifestyle for its members, and they would promptly inform the academy if one of their own were going to miss a day. Iruka wasn't a stupid man, and so the gears in the Chunin's head began to turn. This is too strange, something must be up, but what? Iruka asked yet again, eyeing Naruto curiously as the boy's face turned from tan to red and back again. Ignoring the chromatic changes in his favorite student's pigment, Iruka tried to connect the dots on what could possibly be going on, all the while hoping that Naruto's behavior wasn't somehow linked to this anomaly. "Iruka-san, I am here to retrieve one Uzumaki Naruto," said a voice from the doorway and as Iruka turned, all he saw was a porcelain mask. Recognizing it as an Anbu mask, all thoughts of Naruto's innocence went flying out of his mind, and he realized that whatever Naruto did was much more serious than he could have possibly thought. Judging the man's shift in demeanor from behind his mask, the Anbu agent gave his condolences to the academy teacher in hopes to calm the man's nerves. "Do not worry, Iruka-san, Uzumaki-san will not be harmed. However, he must come with me to the Hokage's office to answer a few questions on his location last night." Lighting through the room, all eyes were on Naruto as the masked man made his way towards Naruto. He was the shinobi elite, master of his given profession, and one of the Hokage's personal soldiers, hand-selected for his prowess in the shinobi arts. However, even for someone as skilled as him, predicting Konoha's most unpredictable ninja and training was still an impossibility. As the Anbu's hand reached for Naruto's shoulder, the blonde boy popped, giving off a large flash of light. When did he manage to complete a bunshin? The man thought frantically as he switched to his other senses and searched out for the blonde boy. The chaos of the panicked students made using his sense of sound and smell useless, and in a last-ditch effort, the Anbu focused his chakra awareness to its maximum potential, only to find that the boy was still untraceable. "Nothing, the boy completely vanished," the Anbu added as his disorientation from the improvised flashbang faded. Realizing that he had underestimated the child, the Anbu quickly switched into mission mode, where he began to critically analyze the situation and devise a quick and efficient solution to the problem. The target is capable of a heightened level control over the Bunshin Jutsu and capable of easily creating distractions from the said jutsu. The man started as he went into autopilot while scanning the class from behind his porcelain mask. Naruto had disappeared and, with no visible change in any of his surroundings, other than a few knocked over desks from panicked craze, he didn't have much of a place to start looking from. "Well, all the windows and door haven't been opened or closed, so it's safe to say he's still in this room," Anbu listed off as he slowly began quarantining the room, breaking it into logical zones despite the chaos. This, which would have taken a normal shinobi several minutes and giving his enemy ample time to escape, was done in seconds, and with a surprising flash of killing intent, the whole room went still. The students stared wide-eyed at the man as they stood paralyzed in fear, long after he suppressed his monstrous aura. It was as if he had snuffed the energy out of all of them, leaving them as frightened as deer in front of a Kaiten jutsu. However, even after his little demonstration, Naruto still hadn't surfaced. "The boy is good, to say the least. I had planned to use enough killing intent to freeze the boy up long enough so that he would appear from wherever he is hiding, without causing most of the students to vomit or, kami forbid, succumb to their darker impulses," the Anbu commented, not wanting to be the one to explain the Hokage why a child took their own life to free him or herself from his killing intent. Sighing, the Anbu showed his first visible sign of frustration when he marched up to the nearest student and began to inspect him thoroughly with all his senses. The process was quick, given how unskilled the majority of the students were at concealing their chakra from him, so the Black Ops agent knew that as soon as he encountered the slightest resistance, he would find his target. Meanwhile, Naruto stood on the far side of the room cloaked as Hinata, thanking Kami for the fact that the girl was tremendously shy and hardly noticed by anyone in the class. Spotting Iruka assisting a pale-looking Kunoichi, who just lost all of her breakfast thanks to the Anbu's display, Naruto looked over his options as time slipped away ceaselessly. "Now what do I do?" Naruto asked, slightly shaken from the Anbu's previous display. For once, the glares from the villagers helped him, since he was now the gripping feel of killer intent had almost become second nature to Naruto. In fact, it was because of that constant barrage of murderous intent that Naruto was able to suppress his own, and now, this ninja version of cat and mouse was heating up. Naruto began to formulate a plan of escape from the top of his head, realizing immediately that in his current position, he wouldn't be able to escape undetected. I doubt I will be able to escape from here undetected even if I was 2 classrooms down. This masked guy is just too good, but if I were able to get to the window, Naruto thought as his natural cunning began to fill in the blanks between getting from point A to point B. Subtly, Naruto brought his hands together, feigning hand seals as the shy and defensive mechanism that Hinata hid behind when she was nervous. Releasing just enough chakra to alert the Anbu, he would have to time his jutsu just right and in perfect succession if he would have any hope of making to the window and out of the classroom. Activating his Kawarimi just as the Anbu's descending hand touched Hinata, Naruto dropped his henge and switched places with a chair from the opposite side of the room. The masked shinobi followed the trail of chakra that the jutsu left over to Naruto's current position in front of the window, with the rising sun to his back. Smirking in almost a poetic way, Naruto brought his hands together for his most practiced seal. Now it's time for the show. Warwick no Jutsu, Sexy Jutsu. The young blonde called as his disguised form shifted into the one described in the new book he was reading. The Anbu agent couldn't help but stare at the long legs, slender waist, and large bust that were now provocatively placed in front of him, instead of Uzumaki Naruto. Feeling his defenses crumble and his strict moral code fall victim, it is instinctual obligation to ogle the ravishing young lady. Anbu flew backward when the blonde bombshell gave him a wink and a kiss, putting the shinobi elite out like a light before escaping through the window. Leaving a class full of traumatized children in his wake, Naruto laughed aloud as he took to the streets and headed for his back alley kingdom. If they want me, they'll have to catch me first, Naruto thought merrily before submerging himself into the shadow of the day. The stage had been set and the chase was on. Not so shortly afterwards. It had been the longest and most drawn-out chase that Naruto had ever led anyone on. It had gone from the back alley slums of Konoha all the way around to the still seething Uchiha district, before finally ending at the site of Naruto's last nefarious plot. The Hokage monument, Naruto thought as his eyes shifted from side to side, slanted with a cautious, yet cunning light. The boy passively eyed each of his pursuers, making sure to note each one's strengths and weaknesses for future reference, just in case they had to catch him again. Not that they'd volunteer, unless ordered by the Hokage himself, commented Naruto, merely staring clearly into each of the exhausted eyes of his pursuers. They all had the same look of irritated awe while looking at the slightly winded child, who had led them on a death marathon worthy of Mido Guy himself before finally being cornered, or so they thought. In a flash, Naruto's hands came together in the ram seal, and on reflex, all of his pursuers covered their eyes. Over the course of the grueling ordeal, Naruto had used that seal for a plethora of things, examples including multiple bunshin, flashbang bunshin, and his personal favorite, the Warwick no Jutsu. It was needless to say that the retrieval team had become weary of being confused, blinded, and blasted away by your own sexual fantasies come to life would do that to you, Naruto thought jubilantly, before slipping out of yet another attempt to capture him. If it were up to him, this chase would go on all night, and with the sun still high above his head, it didn't look like they would be stopping anytime soon, or so he thought. Just as he was making his dashing escape, a hand shot out and grabbed his collar, yanking him cleanly off the ground and 2 feet in the air, where the boy struggled humorlessly against the man's impossibly strong grip. Watching the boy continue to struggle despite its futility, the man sent a heavily suppressed dose of his killing intent directly at the blonde in hopes to knock him out. The wave of emotion only served to draw Naruto's attention up to the porcelain-smooth dog mask the Anbu commander was wearing. Paying no heed to the prestige of his captor or the graveness of the situation he was in, Naruto continued to struggle much to the awe of men and women surrounding him, and even more so to the man holding him. The temporary shock wore off before both his peers and captive noticed, and with pinpoint precision, the Anbu agent pricked the back of Naruto's neck in one skilled motion before the boy's world went black and his body went still. There's no way I should have needed to use such a technique to subdue a child. The killing intent alone should have been enough to knock out a chunin if directly aimed at them, but this kid just took it as if it was a light tap on the shoulder. The dog Anbu commented as he slung the 6-year-old culprit onto his shoulders before turning his gaze to his relieved comrades. I had to put down my icha for this. All of you need to go back to the basics if you had so much trouble catching this little guy, the Anbu commander barked out, much to the chagrin of his peers. In truth, had the boy not been in such an open area or distracted, the Anbu doubted that even he would have been able to catch the blonde, assuming that he upheld the pretense of bringing him back unharmed. Well, so much for my break. Naruto and Kasumi will have to wait for later, as I'm positive the Hokage will want to see this kid now, the Anbu added with an invisible wince before disappearing in a shunshin to the Hokage's office. Hopefully the Hokage was in a good mood, otherwise, Naruto may be in for more than the usual ass chewing and community service. The Hokage's office. The Hokage was in no good mood. Hell, one could venture to say he was in a bad mood, however, a bad mood would be putting it lightly. No, a bad mood would be another stack of paperwork to complete or someone cutting into his private relaxation time with his copy of Icha Paradise, the Golden Collector's Edition. Those would have been bad moods, however, this was something far greater than just a bad mood. Someone had broken into the Uchiha complex, vandalized the place, while at the same time humiliating almost every individual residing in the estate with the space of a night, and he had a sneaking suspicion he already knew who the culprit was. Naruto, why did you have to pick the Uchiha of all clans? I mean, any other clan would have been fine, and probably would have laughed it off as a particularly unfunny joke, but the Uchiha. The Nara, the Yamanaka, the Akimichi, the Hyuga, well, maybe not the Hyuga, but any of the others would have been fine, but the Uchiha. The Hokage thought bitterly as he met the angry gaze of Uchiha Fugaku for the umpteenth time in the space of 10 minutes. The tension in the air was palpable, and the Hokage was sure if he had been anyone other than Sarutobi Sasuke, the legendary professor and hero of the Second Shinobi War, he might have met an unsightly end at the hands of the angry Sharingan Lord. However, that did nothing to settle the hostile atmosphere. Fugaku was angry, not just because his house and home had been broken into and defiled, but because the Hokage had explicitly stated that the culprit would not undergo any physical harm. The old man is too soft. The boy may be the prison for that thing, but there is no reason that he should get off with an insignificant punishment unlike the rest of us, especially for an action as inexcusable as this one. The clan lord thought, rattled at the fact that the blonde menace would yet again get off without so much as a scratch. He would see to it that he got his just retribution, and even if it took deliberately disobeying the Hokage himself, but the blonde boy would know what it truly meant to cross the Uchiha. Poof. The near-silent sound of someone exiting a shunshin drew Fugaku's attention away from his thoughts. Analyzing the Charka signature that was subtly filling the air with the Anbu commander's arrival, the clan lord didn't need his Sharingan to know that this man's reserves were truly massive. However, despite the man's impressive chakra supply, which he could even go as far as to say it was near cage level, Fugaku found that it was nothing in comparison to the amount of Charka that the young blonde being held up by his collar possessed. Naruto saw the Uchiha's scrutiny and quickly regained his composure. Within moments, the incredible supply of chakra pressure had left the room, leaving an empty vacuum in its wake. Fugaku just watched a boy with thinly veiled surprise. A second ago, he had almost as much chakra as the Hokage in his prime, and now he was registering as nothing more than a newborn baby. No, that isn't right either. Even newborns have a chakra signature of some sort, but this boy has none. How is that possible? Even full-fledged Jonin can't completely seal off their chakra signature, and those that can, have either the bare minimum amount to be Jonin, or they are chakra manipulation experts. This boy is neither, and yet he mastered such an advanced level of chakra manipulation that seems to be all but innate to him, Fugaku deduced from just a few moments of problem solving. He could easily say that breaking down problems and rebuilding them into logical conclusions was his greatest skill, despite the years of being called a shinobi genius and his near-legendary prowess on the battlefield. However, in spite of all of that, he could not figure out why this child could perform a technique no one his age, or even a decade older than him could or should be able to perform. The man's data crunching brought him back to the subject at hand when he recalled why he was here in the first place and righteous fury that accompanied it. This child had somehow gotten into his home and destroyed the place. Although reconstruct would be a simple matter of paying the right people to replace or rebuilding everything properly, the financial figures needed to back the projects would be far from it. The damage from the fire alone would cost hundreds of thousands of ryu from the clan's treasury to repair the ancient wooden fixtures and architecture. In addition, there was the added expense of replacing the vast majority of the clan's attire. Not a pretty sight considering that most of it was custom made from special ceremonies and tailored to be some of the finest gear the great village of Konoha had to offer. All in all, the boy could probably spend his whole life working the highest class missions and never fully repay the debt given the village's current state of prosperity. Fiscal matters aside, there was also the problem of security that needed to be addressed. This child had broken into his home, the famed Uchiha complex, home to the Sharingan, and the proverbial belly of the beast to all the enemies of the clan and Konoha, and he had done it without detection. The feat alone is outlandish and something that not even the most hardened of S-rank Nukenin would attempt, no matter how drunk off power they were. However, if news of a child doing it with only 1 month of official training under his belt, the consequences it would bring would be far greater than a bruised ego or wallet for the Uchiha. Now, with all that said, anyone with half a brain cell could see that this wasn't just the Uchiha's problem, but it was the entire population of Konoha's problem. Activating his Sharingan, Fugaku wasted no time in turning the famed scarlet orbs onto the youth to persuade the boy to spill just how he managed to do the impossible. But just as he was about to enter the boy's mind and plant the first suggestive compulsive, a triad of terrors hit him. The first was the third Hokage's killing intent. Years of battle hardened Fugaku into a tactical mastermind who could face down some of the strongest enemies the shinobi world had to offer without even batting an eye. However, staring down a cage he had known all his life to be the strongest man in the village, bar the fourth, was simply too much to handle. Compounded with that was the Anbu commander's formidable killing intent, which was combined with the intense glare from his partially hidden Sharingan eye. Fugaku could only stare into Naruto's impassive eyes, the blonde's Charka signature hidden from the world and mind completely sealed behind an unreadable mask. Who is this boy? Fugaku asked himself rhetorically, knowing that even though the boy imprisoned Konoha's greatest monster, that alone didn't explain so many of the cryptic traits the boy possessed. Honestly, the inability to read the child's mind shook him just as much, if not more than the Hokage and Anbu commander's combined killing intent. My apologies, Hokage-sama, Anbu-san, Fugaku stated cordially, attempting to bring some semblance of order back to himself in the meeting. He needed to regain some sort of control over the situation. The boy was guilty, that much was certain. He just needed to be patient enough for the boy to slip up and the Hokage to see through his act. Now it's only a matter of time, nothing can go wrong. Fugaku began contently in his head before the oaken double doors of the Hokage's office opened, revealing the two Anbu guards stationed in front of the office, as well as the culprit behind the interruption. Now why would you decide to show up, now of all times, Hyuga? The Uchiha head spat angrily to his former teammate and rival. For all his calculatory power and deductive reasoning, Fugaku couldn't figure out for the life of him why his arch-rival was now standing in front of the Hokage, juxtaposed to him. I simply arrived at the predetermined time I set up with the Hokage himself. A problem arose last night, well before you decided to barge into the Hokage's office unannounced. Unlike you, however, I decided to alert the Honorable Hokage-sama that I would be dropping by to discuss the next course of action, the Hyuga head stated, while only sparing a simple glance towards his arch-rival, targeting the man with his piercing pale eyes. Like the Uchiha Sharingan, the Byakugan was a mark of greatness for all who possessed it, as well a curse for the many who weren't privileged to rule it. Hyuga Hiashi was one of those privileged few who ruled over the Byakugan, and with that power came two responsibilities. First and foremost, his duty was to seek out and destroy anything that may harm or bring harm to the clan, while at the same time, search for anything to extend the clan's power. This was the only true law of the Hyuga, so to speak, but Hiashi held a second truth dear to his heart. The law imparted to him by his deceased younger brother, a death that haunted him as if he had killed him with his very own hands. However, from that guilt came his second, self-imposed, truth. Defend my precious people even if it costs me my life. Hiashi stated firmly, passing the message through his eyes to the black-haired man beside him. Not scared at all by the look, the Uchiha wasn't counter-frightened by the look, but instead grew much more serious than before. There was something about the situation he didn't know about, and something told him we was about to find out. I'm guessing that either we are involved somehow, or the Hyuga have a message that they need the whole village to hear, otherwise it would be well within my rights to ask them to leave, Fugaku stated as he threw the Hokage a pointed look. The old man relented on his killing intent and sighed, knowing that as soon as he spoke that this situation would get even more complicated. Growing grave-faced, the aged shinobi cast his eyes at the two Anbu at the door, silently signaling for them to leave. The two oaken doors swiftly closed, sealing the Uchiha and Hyuga in a room to sort out their differences. Needless to say that they were in for a long day. With the doors now shut in confirmation from the Hokage, Hiashi began to explain just why he was here at the same time with the Uchiha. Yesterday, at approximately an hour before dusk, one of our branch family members was assaulted while making their way back to the Hyuga complex. I have significant reason to believe that the assailants were of your household, Hiashi stated shortly. The Hyuga head spoke plainly and pulled no punches, a trait that had long since developed in the wake of his wife and brother's deaths, and leaving him the burden and responsibility of running the clan on his own. Fugaku, having dealt with the man in front of him for several years, had never once been so furious at his Hyuga counterpart than at that very second. This is inconceivable, totally preposterous. How dare you accuse one of my own without evidence, in front of the Hokage himself no less. Hyuga, you have said some abhorring things to me, but this one has to be the lowest. You would dare excuse my clan with such slanderous accusations, just to get ahead of my clan in the eyes of the Hokage, Hyuga, that is beyond forgivable. The Uchiha head finished coldly, glaring darkly at the pale man before him. Had Hiashi not been a Hyuga and a clan lord himself, he would have feared the dark-haired lord's gaze. However, years of staring down. Tyrants, Nukenin, and worst of all, power-hungry bureaucrats has refined his sense of self to such a fine point that nothing short of Hokage conniption could cause him to bat an eye. Are you quite finished, or will you go on longer making a fool out of yourself? What with you spouting slanderous accusations and other foolish anger-driven words, I was beginning to think that I would never get to finish the rest of my case, Hiashi countered coolly, throwing the Uchiha's words right back in his face and literally dousing the Uchiha's righteous fire with a few chilling words. Watching the figurative flames dying down into angry embers, Hiashi waited silently for the angered man's compliance before continuing. As I was saying, I have reason to believe the assailants were of the Uchiha because the one assaulted was my daughter. Hiashi stated tensely. The room temperature dropped a few degrees just by the man's tone. The veins around his eyes began to bulge as telltale sign of his anger and habit of dealing with those things personally. Anata would not lie to me, not after what she's been through, the man uttered with genuine regret. He had isolated himself from his eldest after his wife died and poured himself into being the perfect Hyuga head in hopes that his daughter would grow strong on her own and not ever be subject to pain of the likes he felt when he lost his Hitomi. That plan backfired, and instead of making the girl strong, it pushed her further into her shell, so far that any attempt he made to coax her out was met with fear and doubt. That was my second great failure, I will not make a third. Hiashi vowed to himself while letting the weight of his words settle on the Uchiha in front of him. Well, I can't argue with your source, but isn't it possible that someone tried to kidnap your daughter again? I know the wound is still fresh, but I wouldn't put it past the Cloud Bastards to try again, Fugaku offered clearly, avoiding a direct confrontation with the pale man. It wasn't that he was afraid, no, his years of war and life or death battles saw to that, but in the long history of rivalry, he grew to understand and even tentatively befriend the Hyuga head, assuming their interests didn't clash. In those long years, he could easily name the 3 things that the proud man truly regretted. 1 was the loss of his brother, 2 letting his wife die despite him doing the best he could to keep her, and third one was isolating his daughter. The first 2 were in the past, but this last regret the man could still fix, and Fugaku knew that Hiashi would die before he let harm come to his daughter again. Smirking at the thought, Fugaku could see why Hiashi was acting as he was, cold and detached, because if he hadn't, he doubted that there wouldn't be an all-out war between the 2 clans at the moment. I see you've come to realize the complexity of the situation, Hiashi stated calmly, the cold fury in his voice dying down to a chilly breeze. Neither man would never truly like one another, but as far as understanding went, they were as readable to one another as 2 open books. Humoring the notion for a moment, the Hokage couldn't help but find the statement true, and with a flick of his wrist, he motioned for Naruto to come forward. The blonde timidly stepped forward, knowing for the myriad of emotions just displayed that this had blown far out of the proportions of simple revenge. Meeting Hiashi's stare and Fugaku's glare, Naruto just watched passively as the 2 men went back to discussing the situation with one another before it finally found its way towards his involvement. So you're telling me that your daughter was cornered by one of my younger, more passionate kinsmen before this boy here came to her rescue and fought him off just long enough for her to escape? Fugaku asked skeptically. Precisely, only it wasn't just one, there were 3, otherwise how else do you figure a junior member of your clan managed to subdue and replace her caretaker without her noticing? Hiashi replied. Implications aside, both clan lords knew that the Hyuga were stronger in both numbers and general power. Really, the only way the Uchiha even contended with them was the sole fact that the Hyuga stalemated themselves by only teaching their main branch the full teachings of Jaikin. Add to the fact that with the main to branch family ratio being 1:3, only a quarter of the clan had the potential to fully master the art. That left the Uchiha just enough room to prosper, seeing as an experienced Sharingan wielder's only competition was either an experienced main house member or a full-fledged jonin. So the story goes 3-on-1. I'll believe that given your preparations to ensure nothing like the botched peace signing ever happens again, that it would take more than one junior member of my clan to defeat your daughter's bodyguard, as well as the element of surprise. However, how could this boy do what your guard could not? Fugaku instigated subtly, the slight nuance in tone signified his partial acceptance of the idea. However, a more rational side of his brain wanted proof. I never said the boy won, but from my daughter's account, he did stall them all the way up until the point where the ringleader of this soon-to-be-punished group activated his Sharingan and apprehended the boy in the midst of his escape, Hiashi clarified, knowing that Fugaku could fill in the blanks from there. Given Naruto's pranking precedents and current standing with the younger generation, Fugaku had no doubt in his mind that the boy had bitten off much more than he could chew when he was caught. Knowing a humiliating defeat such as that one would be unforgivable in the mind of the young blonde, the Uchiha head peered into the young boy's eyes again. The glimmer of light caught Fugaku's eyes as the roaring blaze that represented Naruto's indomitable spirit pushed against the confines of the blonde's mortal body and threatened to engulf the Uchiha leader whole. He had, without a doubt, found his proof onto who vandalized his home, as well as the disturbing fact of why he did it. The thought, however, took a backseat to another emotion, one of great relief. It was a refreshing experience for an old retired warrior such as him to see one so young with so much fire within him. The mere sight of it alone brought up a wistful bubble within the clan lord's chest, silently reminding him of 2 of the greatest people that he, and the world for that matter, ever knew. The boy certainly does resemble them, both of them. I wonder how Minato would react if he were here. The Uchiha asked himself, knowing that the fair and just Hokage would have only one option available to him. Hokage-sama, now that I fully understanding the situation, all my personal charges will be dropped, however, I doubt my clan will feel the same, Fugaku announced stoically. Neither his face nor his aura betrayed him, but on the inside, he was fighting against himself. His clan would want revenge, they taught him that, and he knew his clan would lend a hand to those who they favored and utterly destroy those who crossed them. There was no getting around that fact, it was as immovable as the Hokage's monument itself. To remedy the situation I propose a compromise, however, I feel neither I nor Hiashi can completely oversee its drafting, as it will hold no standing within our opposing clans. Therefore, the decision must fall to the highest authority in Konoha's shinobi forces, Fugaku stated before casting a glance to his leader. What he said had been true, like the Hokage before him, he commanded the full respect and loyalty from his forces, and those who didn't comply met his full, indignant fury. I see, Hokage replied simply whilst taking in a deep breath, filling his aged lungs with a rich Kusa imported tobacco from his pipe. As any true leader, all he had was an ultimatum, one that could ostracize one or both of the arguing parties and create an even large schism between the two. I need to be fair to both parties, while at the same time consider the circumstances that pushed the boy to act, the Hokage thought to himself before coming to a decision. Exhaling a plume of smoke, the Hokage called upon his weathered voice in the wake of the noxious air and pulled both the clan lords' attention to him once again. Taking into consideration all of the events that occurred, I feel that we are indebted to Naruto for not only stopping what could be the largest civil dispute since Madara's uprising, but also showing us how complacent we have become. To be able to sneak into the Uchiha complex and vandalize that place shouldn't be an easy task, especially one that an academy student can complete, the Hokage stated before pausing and casting his gaze on his audience. Both the clan lords were listening intently, while Naruto sat in the side of the room, smug overhearing his accomplishment verbally. However, the Hokage continued, Naruto's actions were unsanctioned and treasonous at its worst and cannot go unpunished. Therefore, when tallied against the benefits of this incident, I can only see one fair and just verdict. The Hyuga will choose the boy's punishment and method in which he can pay back all the damages he caused to the Uchiha. The guidelines should be reasonable enough so that the boy gets the best protection as he serves off his time, as well as fairly compensate the Uchiha for their loss, the Hokage finished. Thus the moods quickly changed, the two stoic lords suddenly became animated once again, hammering out the details for Naruto's work contract, while the now silent boy sat on the sidelines completely dumbstruck. The smug smirk had been completely wiped off his face, and it took a few seconds for his mind to reboot and figure out why he was being punished now of all times. He had done the right thing. The Hokage had said it, albeit for the wrong reasons, but it was the right thing. Casting his gaze towards the old man in hopes of an answer, Naruto only found the man's humored expression, and he realized that he wasn't getting out of this. Chapter 2. Halcyon Daydream. Damn Fugaku, damn Hiashi, damn Hokage, damn waking up at 4 to work off my debt, damn Naruto muttered mentally as he vigorously swept up the fetid ashes of his most recent prank. Although saying he was angry was an understatement, Naruto couldn't bring himself to be mad at Hinata, even though he was in this mess, because he had taken the time out to save her, thus inadvertently setting himself on a prank crusade to pay the Uchiha back for his humiliation. Sometimes life is so unfair, Naruto thought depressingly as he continued to clean the smoldering pit that was once the Uchiha's prized atrium. Naruto supposed that there was a silver lining to this situation as he witnessed firsthand the looks of utter rage on each Uchiha's face as they passed the site during their morning rounds. To make matters sweeter, none of them could lay a finger on him or they would meet the combined wrath of the Uchiha head, the Hyuga head, and the Hokage himself. Brandishing the last of the ashes into the complex's dumpster, Naruto made his way over to the workers' quarters where he was to find his next assignment. He learned a surprising amount about the legendary Copy Nin clan within the few hours he had been working inside their walls. Like for one, he hadn't nearly put a dent in the clan's laundry like he thought he did, or more aptly, the whole clan's laundry. He only desecrated the shinobi part of the clan's gear, and from what he learned, the vast majority of the clan had not or could not activate their Sharingan and were either forced to adapt and become normal ninja, so to speak, or find other, safer professions. Most chose the latter, and from that choice, the lucrative Uchiha family business was born. The majority of this business pertained to trading and using the clan's substantial amount of cloth in the shinobi and political world to make an organized business for Konoha while taking a bit of profit on the side. However, a smaller subsection of the business had been organized to employ family members to work within the clan to get each of the day-by-day duties completed without wasting money on countless servants, thus neutralizing the potential threat of spies and assassins sneaking into the clan. Too little, too late was all Naruto had to say about that last little tidbit. Regardless, these Uchiha were the thought-oriented, savvier, and laid-back Uchiha in comparison to their battle-oriented, haughtier, and uptight brethren. Needless to say that there was a bit of friction between the two factions, and it didn't help that one half had to do the other half's laundry. And somehow, I managed to find myself messing with the Uchiha's laundry, yet again, Naruto added scornfully as he greeted his new co-workers, who for the most part, had been rather kind to him. Probably because most of the damage Naruto had done to the warrior caste of the clan, and it helped that the majority of them were only a few years older and were looking to make some friends outside of the complex. "So, is this all you do every day?" Naruto asked curiously as he folded yet another pair of pink polka-dotted boxers. Had he known they were the clan heads, he would have stashed some away in his storage backpack for future blackmail, but seeing as he was blissfully ignorant, Naruto handed the folded drawers to one of his new co-workers, who stowed them into Fugaku's basket without another thought. "Nah, we usually play strip poker and other stuff once we're done, but with all this mess, I doubt we'll have a free moment to play for a long time," the boy responded nonchalantly as he continued on with the salvageable amount of laundry. For once, Naruto actually felt ashamed of his actions. He had completely written off the whole clan as assholes and now had come to find out that only a small percent were, and because of them, the majority of the clan suffered. Divining the young blonde's thoughts from his highly expressive features, the older Uchiha attempted to cheer the hyperactive kid up. Don't worry about it too much, we would have to go out and buy the latest clothing trends and gear for them within a month, and you saved us the trouble of having to get rid of all the leftovers. Granted, you may have taken a few shirts out of the Leaf's Goodwill collection box, but in the end, it saved us all the pain of having to listen to someone's bitching as we got rid of their clothes, the older Uchiha stated jokingly, while his fellow brethren nodded in agreement. Instantly feeling better, Naruto turned back and started to work when he heard another offhand comment that got him thinking. Besides, it's not like we're in the Hyuga branch family or anything. They have it bad, another Uchiha added as they loaded up the last of the laundry and prepared to distribute it throughout the complex. Looking around at the agreeing faces, Naruto's confused gaze landed on the first Uchiha, who had tried to make him feel better. What did he? Politics kid, politics, something I doubt you're really interested in at your age. Anyways, I never got your name, the boy said as he helped Naruto with his basket as well. Naruto, Uzumaki Naruto, and remember it because it's the name of your future Hokage. The blonde replied as he followed behind the dark-haired boy, ignoring some of the angrier looks he was getting from a few of his victims. Itachi, Uchiha Itachi, the dark-haired boy called back as he rounded the corner, silently beckoning Naruto to follow. Sasuke couldn't believe it, he just couldn't believe it. Not only was he running late, but his brother. The famed Uchiha Itachi, Chunin at 10, Jonin only months after, and finally reaching Anbu at the prodigious age of 13, still maintained relations with the lower house of the Uchiha, as well as the culprit behind the clothes fiasco. Deep down, Sasuke knew that a majority of disbelief came from the fact that in one day, Naruto had managed to capture the full attention of not only his father, but also his brother. That fact alone burned hotter in Sasuke's mind than his hunger for both of their acknowledgement. How can he be that carefree? Doesn't he realize how much trouble he's caused? Or better yet, the trouble he's in. The dobe should be groveling for mercy, begging to be forgiven for the crimes he committed. And yet he manages to walk on as if none of that phases him. Sasuke brooded silently as he watched Naruto vividly converse with his brother, and as if playing to Sasuke's ire, his father brushed by him without so much as a word, eyes fully trained on the scene in front of him. Yuka, subordinate. What are you doing? It's almost 8 and you still haven't finished up yet. Your tardiness will not be tolerated, and any failure will be seen as an ineptitude on your part, Fugaku barked, his glare unwavering and his posture fully displaying his aggravated mood. It was almost shocking to 2 of the 3 people in the hallway to see Fugaku with anything other than a blasé attitude to that which was around him. However, to Naruto, he had seen the Uchiha head's anger, and although he'd never admitted aloud, the old man scared the shit out of him. Snapping up, Naruto scurried into action carrying 2 basketfuls of new clean linens away, barely noting Sasuke as he rushed by. Likewise, Sasuke hardly spared more than an impassive glance for the blonde as he dashed by, his full attention was on the tense scene unfolding before him. Although there were no words spoken, Sasuke could tell that there was a silent battle going on between his father and his elder brother. It was then that Sasuke realized that Itachi was offended by the way their father treated Naruto. The thought alone left a bitter taste in his mouth, but as the implication set in, Sasuke realized that Naruto was able to draw out a stronger reaction from both his brother and father than he, Sasuke, ever had. Albeit the reaction from his father was anger, but that did little to appease the thoughts that roaring in his mind as he continued to watch his brother and father glare at one another. Both respect from my brother and attention from my father, he's managed to get everything I've ever wanted, Sasuke contemplated bitterly as the 2 colossi broke off from their heated exchange and went their separate ways. He was so focused on his thoughts that the dark-haired boy hardly noticed the swishing robes making their way towards him until he heard his father calling out to him as he passed. You shouldn't tarry either, your progress in the shinobi arts leaves much to be desired, or should I bring up your last report card? Now quickly run along, before you are tardy to class and have wasted more of our time, Fugaku said dismissively, having drained the passion in his voice from before, as well as having completely filling himself up with apathy for that which was around him. Feeling cold and forgotten, Sasuke tore his gaze from his father's back and made his way to his room to finish collecting his school supplies before heading off to class. The whole academy buzzed with hushed murmuring, each of the students gossiping about the clothing massacre's events. Exaggerated retellings of the night's events passed from one ear to the other, growing more absurd and more obscene with each retelling. While the younger, more naive students focused on the cooler aspects of Naruto's feats and found them to be a great marker for what was to come from their training, the more mature students as well as the sensei were reeling from the implications of the blonde prankster's actions. What now? If Naruto has shown anyone anything, I'm willing to bet on this year's graduating class that serious precautions will be implemented to ensure that it never happens again and/or that we are ready for them in the future. How safe is our village if an academy student, the dead last at that, can sneak into one of the greatest strongholds in all of the village without being detected? Are we really safe from Kyuubi's wrath? Now that the child has proved himself to be just as dangerous as the fox, hell even more so, now that he has subtlety on his side, insert dry chuckle, what's stopping him from taking revenge on all of us for imprisoning him? However, before any more thoughts along the same vein could be conjured, the boy in question stepped into the room, and the growing buzz of chatter suddenly died into a dead quiet, leaving only an uncomfortable blonde standing in awkward silence. Making his way down to his seat in the now buzzing silence, Naruto threw his glaze to Iruka in silent hopes that the academy instructor would save him from the tortuous scrutiny. "Naruto, you are a handful," Iruka thought before sighing and gathering the class's attention. "Quite. That's better, now I know all of you have heard some retelling or another of one of your classmates' escapades 2 nights ago, so I will say this once to ensure we are perfectly clear on this subject. The event that transpired last night is officially an S-class secret," Iruka stated firmly before pausing. Sweeping his gaze across the room, Iruka laced his stare with a small amount of killing intent to get his point across. "And now that I'm sure everyone's listening, so any unwarranted discussions of the subject can be considered a serious breach in protocol and may even be considered high treason against your village," Iruka finished with a smirk. Despite the fact that all he said was indeed the truth, the Hokage nor the council would ever consider putting an academy student on trial for high treason over something as petty as gossip. However, he figured if the mere thought of more homework was more than enough to scare all but the most hardcore of busybodies from speaking, and then this would keep even the ever-talkative Yamanaka Ino and Haruno Sakura quiet for at least a week. True to his predictions, all the class, even the dreaded duo, dropped the conversations like rotting garbage. "Moving on, it looks like everyone is here, so why don't we start the day off with a little sparring practice," Iruka stated before ushering the class out onto the courtyard. Ushering a class of 30+ students was no easy task, regardless of what kind of teacher you are. For Iruka, this task was exceptionally difficult, given the fact that he not only had an Inuzuka in his class, but also an Uzumaki as well. Naruto was a handful. Anyone older than 12 knew that, hell anyone who had the special privilege of being the target of one of his pranks knew that, but when Naruto got outside the classroom and into an environment he learned best in, well, this Naruto made the fun-loving, prank-pulling classroom Naruto everyone knew and loathed look like a docile and obedient student. Listen up, students, this exercise isn't about who's the strongest, fastest, or most talented at Taijutsu. This exercise is to get a good gauge of your current levels in the martial arts after a month of practice, so don't be embarrassed if you lose or don't do everything completely perfect. We'll have more than enough time to stamp out those problems in the years to come. Iruka finished to himself humorlessly as he began watching the first matchup. It became very apparent that most of the children hadn't paid much attention during the last month of instruction, and as proof, the orderly sparring quickly dissolved into a chaotic brawl between two boys. Breaking them up, Iruka sighed aloud before beginning a well-used and rehearsed speech that teachers used even when Iruka was an academy student. "Students, like I said, this isn't about fighting and winning, it's about judging your current skill level and finding what you need to improve on. Therefore, before we continue, I'll have to find someone. Sasuke, you have been instructed in Taijutsu by your clan, right?" Iruka asked the young Uchiha. Nodding absently, Sasuke stepped forward towards his instructor while his mind wandered elsewhere. Thinking back onto the various lessons he received since he had been able to stand, Sasuke reminisced on all of the times his older brother had utterly beat the crap out of him. Itachi called it instruction, but Sasuke knew what it was. The painful thing Itachi liked to call training, was in fact free shots at him without mom's interference, and boy oh boy, did Itachi take his shots. Memories of shoulder tosses and arm bars filled the young boy's mind as he recalled the so-called instruction, as Iruka so eloquently put it. "I can't believe I almost forgot about all those training exercises I had to go through with Itachi. It's almost like we're not even related. I bet he'd never do that to Naruto," Sasuke thought jealously, before another thought hit him. It was devious, hell it was downright evil, but completely fitting in Sasuke's mind. "Iruka-sensei, do you mind if I pick my opponent?" Sasuke asked evenly, his voice never betraying his underlying intent. "I don't see why not, but make sure," Iruka started slowly as he eyed the raven-haired boy curiously, and for good reason, because Iruka didn't even finish his statement before Sasuke called out his opponent. "Naruto, I challenge you, that's if you're not too chicken buka," Sasuke stated, smirking cockily at the younger boy, and like that, the challenge had been made. The crowd of students oated softly as they focused intently on Naruto for his response, and true to his nature, Naruto delivered naturally. Well, it seems as if Captain Pantypants wants to get a little revenge for last night's little prank, then I have no problem with that, just as long as it's okay with Iruka-sensei, Naruto shot back whilst addressing Iruka. Nobody fully understood what Naruto's comeback meant. Well, everyone except one very red Uchiha Sasuke who was seething at the public reminder of what Naruto had personally done to him. I can't believe he said that aloud. Sasuke thought angrily as he recalled running from room to room in search of some male underwear, given that all his drawers had been filled with varying types of panties in them. I think I may have seen some of Mom's. Sasuke thought with a shudder before turning his attention to Iruka as well. I should have seen this one coming. I miss the old days, Iruka thought longingly as he noted the determined gleams in both of the boys' eyes. Knowing neither would take no for an answer, Iruka decided that he'd better lay down some ground rules before letting the two go at one another. Okay, but remember no jutsu, Iruka said, eyeing both of them. From the reports, Naruto had learned all three of the academy's graduation jutsu in the space of a month, while Sasuke was reportedly able to perform mid-ranked Kaiten jutsu. Neither should have been that advanced so soon, but seeing as they were, precautions had to be taken. And also remember, this isn't about winning, it's about measuring one's capacity, if you will, and with that said begin, Iruka stated before stepping back and letting the boys go at it. Unsurprisingly, Naruto charged in. He was a brawler by nature, and his style reflected that. However, unlike the previous two combatants, Naruto had a plan. He figured if he could pull Sasuke into a head-to-head battle, his greater stamina would win out in the end, and Sasuke would be wallowing in pity after his defeat. Iruka, nor in fact anyone, was surprised by Naruto's tactic as he did it in every spar. However, the real surprise came from when Sasuke, despite having the best form out of everyone, charged headfirst as well, instead of staying back and countering as he usually did. Iruka sighed internally, having thought he put too much confidence in the maturity of two 7-year-olds. However, before he could step in, the two met and to a surprising end. Naruto's plan had been simple, but effective it was not. As soon as Naruto came into range, he slung his fist out with all his might, and backed by his momentum, the blonde was sure that the blow would be a knockout blow if it connected. Instead, Naruto's fist met air as Sasuke stepped to the side at the last second before pushing down on Naruto's back. The blonde Uzumaki ate dirt while Sasuke landed gracefully into a basic taijutsu stance. Picking himself up off the ground, Naruto ignored his classmates' laughter and instead clenched his fists in anger. Instantly realizing that's what the Uchiha wanted, Naruto unclenched his hands and turned to face his opponent. He would have to stick to his strategy if he wanted to win. So charging headlong again, Naruto made sure to pay attention to Sasuke's feet this time in case his raven-haired opponent tried the same trick again. Rearing back for another haymaker, Naruto made sure that Sasuke's feet weren't going anywhere before he fully committed himself to the blow. I win, boss, Naruto started before Sasuke's open palm met Naruto's hand. Watching in slow motion, Sasuke guided Naruto's fist across his body. The blonde could feel his center of gravity shift towards the ground yet again before a powerful counter dug into his skull. Everyone winced as the blonde's head went reeling back from the blow. Even Iruka grimaced when he realized how truly advanced Sasuke's technique was. The Uchiha had managed to deflect Naruto's blow with the subtlest of guidance, while at the same time positioning Naruto so that he could throw his whole force and momentum into his blow, all whilst turning Naruto force against. In essence, it was as if Naruto had hit himself with all of his strength combined with Sasuke's. Oozily, Naruto staggered backwards as his vision blurred before a hail of precise blows rained on him from the front. Not having any way to mount an offense, Naruto tried valiantly to defend himself, but without being able to see his assailant, the best Naruto was doing was groping around in the dark. After a bone-shattering kick to the chin lifted him off the ground and into the air, Naruto felt his consciousness fading as he landed in a graceless heap. The crowd of students erupted in noise at the display, none doubting that Sasuke would be victorious, all but one that was, and that one being the sole person to cheer the defeated blonde on. "Gee, get up, Naruto-kun," a small voice uttered so lowly that no one around her could hear her say it. However, to the acutely sensitive ears of the downed blonde, the words rung in his head like a distant bell, a bell that beckoned him back into the light and back on his feet. With agonizing slowness, Naruto climbed back up from the ground while focusing his sole intent on the back of the boy in front of him. Naruto could feel his anger boiling at the Uchiha who turned his back on him, not unlike the three who jumped him the night before, but he wouldn't let it get the best of him. "No, I can't fight solely off of anger, I need to focus, I need to do what Iruka-sensei said. I need to set my intention, pound that pretty boy's face in," Naruto whispered to himself quietly as he focused solely on that goal. Everything faded away, the crowd of children, Iruka-sensei's concerned face, and even his boiling temper. All he saw was Sasuke and the defeated look he'd have on his face once he beat the ego out of him. "Hey you-chan, did you really think that would finish me off?" Naruto called out. Turning around slowly, Sasuke's face glowed in anger as he eyed the beaten and bloodied blonde. "Who are you trying to impress, Buka?" Everyone knows you've lost, you're just too stubborn to give up. Sasuke shouted, hoping that the blonde would just give up. That's what makes me Uzumaki Naruto. Besides, if you could hit harder than Sakura, I probably would stay down, Naruto shot back, and just like that, Sasuke's anger erupted and the black-haired boy charged Naruto. The blonde didn't even charge, he just watched with an impassive and condescending gaze, further infuriating Sasuke, but just as he was about to come into range, Sasuke saw Naruto's eyes change. Not the type of change a defenseless target should have as they watched their assailant descend upon them. No, Naruto's eyes glinted dangerously, invoking a reaction Sasuke hadn't expected, a reaction only Itachi had brought up in him whenever they sparred together, faltering ever so slightly when he realized the comparison. Sasuke couldn't even mount a defense when Naruto's fist came crashing into his face. Watching the Uchiha stumble backward and try to regain his bearings, Naruto pressed his advantage. Darting in quickly and with good form, Naruto threw a tight and concise haymaker toward Sasuke's head, one that the Uchiha had perfectly read, or so he thought. Weaving his head to the side of the powerful straight that was looking to take his head off, Sasuke didn't even see Naruto's hook come crashing into his temple, knocking him off his feet and towards the ground. Out of pure instinct, the Uchiha caught himself at the last moment and managed to pull himself into a roll and put some distance between him and Naruto. What the hell? I'm sure I read his punch perfectly, but then how was it that it just disappeared at the last second? Sasuke asked angrily as he watched Naruto slowly turn and face him. No emotions were displayed on Naruto's face, other than the same dangerous glint that decorated his eyes. Rising slowly, Sasuke could tell Naruto was beckoning him to his feet so that they could continue their spar. It was a fluke, it had to be a fluke, I just have to stay on the defensive and find another opening like the one before, so I can finish this, Sasuke concluded rationally as he watched Naruto charge in before dipping down for a rising uppercut. Shifting his balance backwards, Sasuke could only watch in shock as Naruto's motions disappeared again, and instead of coming up for a powerful punch, Naruto swept his feet from under him. Still in midair, Sasuke watched as Naruto twisted in a flurry of movement, throwing his whole weight into yet another haymaker. Sasuke threw up his guard to defend himself from the power punch aimed for his stomach, when like before, his predictions unraveled themselves before coming to fruition, and Naruto's fist dug deeply into his chin. Landing in a graceless heap, Sasuke tried to ignore the crowd chanting for him to get up, while he glared angrily at the blonde in front of him. How is this possible? Naruto isn't fast, skilled, or intelligent enough to completely fool my predictions, let alone beat me. It has to be some kind of trick but Sasuke's train of thought stopped when his fangirls in the crowd began to chant ninjutsu and accused Naruto of cheating. A tactful and impassive gaze fell from Naruto's eyes as he looked around bewildered at the mob of fangirls. Pleading his case weakly, Naruto thanked Kami for Iruka, otherwise he feared the mob may have turned violent. Quite. I'm certain Naruto didn't use a genjutsu, because how can you be so sure, Iruka-sensei? I mean, the dead last shouldn't even stand a chance against first place, a certain indignant pink-haired student cut in before Iruka could finish what he was saying. The fangirls all agreed and the mob began protesting once again. Biting his tongue, Iruka restrained a few choice words for the mindless mob and sighed as he collected his thoughts. Naruto didn't use any genjutsu, or any jutsu for that matter, because 1. He didn't use any hand seals and 2. There was no molding of chakra necessary to execute a seal-less jutsu. However, Sasuke's suddenly lack of defense is disturbing, but is nothing less than his own inability to defend himself, Iruka stated authoritatively, leaving no room for argument from anyone. Although Naruto's ability to use his killing intent to project false images is a little suspicious, although I didn't sense any leakage from the seal, Iruka added silently, knowing the words killing intent would just incite another riot from the Uchiha's fangirls. Sasuke, I hope you take what I said to heart. You controlled the spar in the beginning, and instead of finishing Naruto off quickly, you allowed your anger to take control, and by the time you regained your head the match was already over, Iruka lectured to the boy. Yes, Iruka-sensei, was all Sasuke could say as his anger stewed. Knowing that this defeat was in fact humbling, Iruka left Sasuke to brood a bit, knowing that anything else may be taken the wrong way. Turning to Naruto, who was looking pretty happy with himself, Iruka managed to suppress the urge to smile before he proceeded to burst Naruto's bubble. Despite your victory, Naruto, your form and execution were severely lacking in the beginning of the spar, and hadn't Sasuke lost focus like he did, you would have been the one defeated, Iruka said, slightly annoyed that there was a loud chorus of yes from Sasuke's fangirls. However, all of those improved during the later part of the match, so all I can say is keep up the good work, Iruka finished, feeling good about sticking it to the fangirls while throwing his favorite student a bone. But, Naruto must have cheated, since there is no way Sasuke-kun would freeze like that after dominating the spar for so long, Sakura, leader of the fangirl nation, sputtered out to Iruka after he complimented Naruto. Not only had her crush been crushed, but by the dope nonetheless. It was unbelievable, he must have cheated. Look Sakura, I really don't want to explain all that went on during the spar, but trust me when I say that Naruto did not cheat. You, and this goes for everyone here, need to be reminded that no one, and I mean no one, is infallible. That type of thinking can lose you more than a spar, it can cost you your life, Haruka finished sternly while looking directly into Sakura's eyes. The pink-haired girl nodded weakly, and Haruka knew he had gotten his point across, but just in case it didn't. Therefore, since Sakura was so selfless in volunteering for the next match, I suppose I should pick her opponent. Kiba, could you make your way to the ring, please? Haruka asked innocently, despite the incredulous look from Sakura. The feral boy just grinned. And that's when I broke your brother's jaw. Naruto shouted excitedly as he repeated the story of his upset victory over Sasuke to Itachi. The older Uchiha controlled himself well, because a lesser man would have chuckled at the amusing antics of his brother, trying to take Naruto's head off. Why don't you tell him about the part where I gave you a concussion? Sasuke asked heatedly, while rubbing the bandages around his jaw. He was still reeling from the blow, and even more so from the talk he had gotten from his father, when he had to explain why he had a broken jaw in the first place. His father figured that since he had to take time out of his schedule to pay for both his and Naruto's medical fees, that Sasuke would have to take time out of his schedule to escort Naruto to and from the Higurashi residence as well. The Higurashis were, and had always been, the village's leading suppliers in shinobi equipment, even from as far back as Itachi's childhood, and as such, they had a very lucrative deal with the Uchiha in exchange for top-of-the-line shinobi equipment that Naruto had broken 2 nights prior. Naruto, for his part, wasn't enthusiastic for being forced into manual labor right after class let out, but he knew it was much better than the alternative of being left to fend for himself with the Hokage's contract protecting him. Wow, this place is big, Naruto thought, stunned as he stared at the whole 2-story building in front of him. The place was as wide as 2 of the houses beside it combined and had a giant chimney that was spewing smoke at an alarming rate. It seems Tenchi-san is working in the forge, Itachi murmured softly as they entered the house. The first floor was the shop itself, and weapons upon weapons were stacked on the shelves, spanning from wall to wall. As they made their way to the counter, Naruto looked up from the weapons he had been admiring and saw a bored-looking girl around his age idly looking at a weapons catalog. I wonder how much time it would take to make that. Now I know I can make the cheese, they're out of their minds if they think we'll pay that much to import those. The girl said sporadically. She hadn't noticed any of the boys or the fact that she was talking to herself aloud and making hand gestures, well at least until Naruto started laughing. Startled, the now embarrassed girl glowed red before recovering and putting her catalog away. Higurashi Tenten at your service. I hope you found what you're looking for, the girl regurgitated automatically as she looked over each one of her customers. How much does that cost? Naruto asked, while pointing at the scabbarded Chikudo on the wall. The blade was all the way at the top and had no price above it, so Naruto figured he may be able to get it for free once they found out he was going to be working here. Sorry, that particular Chikudo isn't for sale. My daddy made it a very long time ago for a friend, but his friend died before he ever got a chance to use it, Tenten said sadly, as if recalling a distant memory. Oh, I didn't. No worries, that's all in the past, so is there anything else I can help you with? Tenten asked after brightening instantly. Yes, we're here to drop him off, it's his first day of work, Itachi cut in, not wanting to take another trip down memory lane because of Naruto's questions. The said blonde stuck his tongue out at the older Uchiha for ruining his fun, but was quickly reprimanded for it. I wouldn't do that if I were you, especially in a place with so many sharp objects. I've known Itachi-kun here to take limbs for less, a voice called out from around the corner. Turning the corner with a grin on his face and a hammer over his shoulder was the owner and operator of the shop, Higurashi Tenchi, and boy was he big. Not just tall, but hulking as well. From shoulder to shoulder the man was wider than Naruto, Sasuke, and Itachi put together. Heaving his protesting daughter onto one of his monstrous shoulders, the tall man let out a boisterous laugh as he recalled a time when his daughter used to love taking rides on his shoulders. Turning towards the trio with his, now pouting, daughter on his shoulder, Tenchi greeted each of them with an eager nod and a beaming grin. Welcome. I already know Itachi-kun, and judging by the hair color, this must be little Sasuke and Naruto, right? The giant asked while pointing from boy to boy. Nodding, the two just stood there silently as the man laughed, once again praising himself for his deductive skills. Well, now that that's all, I guess little Naruto-kun will be coming with me and you and little Sasuke-kun here will be leaving. Tenchi asked Itachi as his laughter died and he placed his daughter back on her seat. Yes, and we'll be back at 7 to pick him up, Itachi stated before turning and leaving, silently beckoning his brother to follow. Once the Uchiha brothers were gone, Tenchi looked Naruto up and down, making inaudible sounds as he circled the boy before finally stopping in the exact place he started. You're perfect. A little on the scrawny and short side. Hey. I'm not short, just haven't hit my growth spurt yet, Naruto shot back indignantly, invoking another round of laughter from Tenchi. Okay, a little on the scrawny and petite side, but perfect nonetheless. You shouldn't have any trouble lifting the weapons and moving them from place to place, Tenchi finished casually as he turned to make his way back down into the basement, aka the forge. Is that all I'll be doing? Moving things from place to place? Naruto asked curiously, both happy that the job may be easy and a little dejected that it would be boring if so. No, that's just the most strenuous thing you'll be doing. There's plenty of stuff to do, like polishing weapons, prepping the water for cooling, and maintaining the fires for the forge. Believe me, moving weapons will seem like a break compared to all the stuff I'll have you doing, Tenchi called from over his shoulder as he descended the stairwell. Then Chan, get him started with some of the little stuff, then work him up, okay dear, the boisterous man called from the cellar, leaving his daughter with Naruto to man the shop. He forgot to mention sweeping, gathering all the raw ore, and cleaning up after his messes as well, Tenten added exasperatedly before turning her gaze to Naruto. Is he always like that? The blonde asked playfully, invoking a giggle from the bun-haired girl. Yeah, but he means well. He's been like that ever since mom died, Tenten said softly, that same far-off look coming back to her eyes. Sorry, didn't mean to. Again, it's nothing, sorry I just get like that sometimes, but anyways let's get to work before he comes back up here and starts talking again. I swear, that has to be the worst punishment ever, death by talking or embarrassing stories, Tenten cut in joyously before she picked up a broom and handed one to Naruto. The two talked about a lot as they worked throughout the shop, and honestly, Naruto learned a lot more about weapons that he had either missed while pulling pranks or just never paid enough attention to notice. Time went by faster than either of them realized, and by the time 7 rolled around, both Naruto and Tenten were covered with soot and laughing at the latest prank Naruto pulled. I can't believe you put that much flash powder on my dad's mallet, he's going to be seeing stars for a week, Tenten exclaimed happily before both of them erupted in a fit of giggles again. Yeah, I thought your dad was going to be mad there for a second, but he just laughed it off and made us clean out the furnace, Naruto added, as they made their way out of the kitchen and into the shop. So that explains the soot on your nose, Itachi called out, startling both children as they continued to joke with one another behind the counter. I'll get it Naruto-kun, Tenten said happily as she swiped at Naruto's nose playfully. Thanks, but I was sure I got it all, Naruto grumbled quietly as he made his way over to the Uchiha brothers and out of the shop. Bye Tenten-chan, see you tomorrow, Naruto cried over his shoulder as he rounded out the door and followed after Itachi's retreating form. Well, it seems you and Tenten are good friends, Itachi said casually as Naruto tried to jibe Sasuke into hitting him. You kidding, she's the best. Naruto exclaimed, not catching Itachi's hidden meaning. Entering the Uchiha complex did nothing to bring down Naruto's good mood, despite all of the glares he was receiving. He had somewhere other than Ichiraku's and school where he wasn't constantly glared at and ignored, and that was more than enough to put him at an untouchable high. Whether that was a good or a bad thing was debatable, especially when Itachi introduced the duo as Naruto got a look at them. Naruto-kun, I'd like you to meet Ibiki-san and Anko-chan, you'll be working with them as a part of your contract, Itachi said lightly, leaving out the parts about them being head of interrogation and torture. Itachi-kun, what did I say about calling me Anko-chan? Anko said with surprising sweetness, so surprising that it didn't fit well with her outfit. Naruto may have been 7, but he knew what appropriate attire was and wasn't, and the wire mesh that just barely hid Anko's breasts was definitely on the inappropriate side of that line. And Anko-chan, remember until you can soundly beat me in combat, I'll never honor that request, Itachi countered back in his same light conversation voice he always seemed to use when mocking her. Knowing he won, Itachi reveled in his victory, knowing if he was just the slightest bit weaker, then Anko would have his balls on a pike. Now you two break it up. We, as in I, Anko and Naruto here, have a job to do, and I'd like not to waste any more time if you would, Ibiki cut in, ushering Naruto and Anko away to begin their work. So, what are we doing? Naruto asked curiously after they made it a fair distance away from the Uchiha brothers. We're cleaning up the mess you made, Anko replied sharply with a snort. She wasn't all too happy with having to give up her precious time to play maid for a bunch of stuck-up snobs, at least not when she had better things to do. Looking curiously at the older woman's face as varying emotions flitted across her features, ranging from as far as anger to this hard to describe emotion he always felt when he read the orange book he had unwittingly stolen from Itachi. Naruto only got confused when he tried to decipher what Anko meant. Noticing the boy's confused expression, Ibiki decided to clarify before the boy managed to piss his partner off. We're going to be surveying and eventually overhauling the Uchiha complex's security system, Ibiki stated in a gruff voice, only to get an even more confused look from Naruto. Basically, you're going to be showing us all the different ways you can break in, and we'll be putting seals there to make sure no one else can exploit them, Anko clarified, while she angrily thought of all that entailed. This place is huge. I mean they have their own district for goodness sake. Not to mention since it'll only be Ibiki, the brat and me, we'll probably have to do each of the 6 subsections on our own and one at a time, Anko thought dismally, her task seemingly more daunting now than ever. That sounds like a lot of work, Naruto added cluelessly, not knowing that Mount Anko was about to erupt. There are 6 subsections that make up the Uchiha district. We, as in us 3, are tasked with surveying, warding, and testing these areas to make sure that they are properly defended against outside threats. That whole process should take no more than 12 days of work to complete, Ibiki explained to the young blonde, while successfully deterring Anko from biting the boy's head off. So, it shouldn't take more than a few months to complete all this, right? Naruto asked after a bit of mental calculation. If only this isn't our main duty or most pressing, and at most, we'll be able to open up a day or two during our monthly schedule to come and work on the job, Anko added dejectedly once again. But that'll take years then, I'll be graduating from the academy by the time we finish this. Naruto exclaimed when he realized how crappy of a situation he had gotten them in. It has to be done, and I'd much rather be doing it now as a result of a simple prank, rather than later as a result of some sort of tragedy, Ibiki stated as they arrived at the first subsection. Looking around at the numerous buildings that they had to search, ward, and then finally test, Naruto felt sick just thinking about it. Now, add a regular workday on top of that and no sex for about a month, and you're in my world, Anko said in a faux joyous voice. Grappling the young boy into a headlock, Anko made sure his head was right between her breasts before she finished what she had to say. Now, if you want to help me out with the sex part, at this point I'm all for it, even if you are a bit young, Anko whispered into the boy's ear before the said blonde passed out from blood loss. Man, I really needed that. Anko shouted as she laughed merrily at the unconscious blonde. I swear, you're like a child, and just so you know, because of that little joke we have to wait until he wakes up to start, Ibiki muttered as he got to work, leaving Anko to wake the knocked out blonde. Come on kid, I was joking, wake up damn it. Anko shouted as she tried waking the blonde, but alas, he was in Icha paradise right now. Itachi, report, an authoritative voice called out from the darkness. Releasing his suppressed killing intent, Itachi's kneeling form ebbed out of the shadows and into the light from the flickering fireplace. The teenage Uchiha lifted his head up, gazing at the tattered form of the man in front of him. This man, although ancient by shinobi standards, was not to be underestimated because of his age. He weathered both the second and third shinobi wars because of his otherworldly skill, and though he lost his arm, he was still amongst the most dangerous in the village. The only thing living that could ever hope to kill him was the thing that had taken his arm and half the village with it. The Kyuubi. Even though the Kyuubi had been defeated years ago, this man, his commander, still wore his bandages as an everlasting reminder of the wounds he had sustained during the battle, as well as the power of the beast that caused them. Danzo-sama, the Uzumaki's contract has been signed and will proceed as planned. During that time, the Uchiha complex will be going through a rewarding process. Security will be tight during that time, so the foreseeable opening will be once the warding is complete, Itachi replied in a quiet monotone. So, 6 years is our soonest window. The heavily scarred man uttered as he closed the portfolio. The missed opportunity 2 nights prior had cost him dearly, however, if Danzo was one thing, he was patient. It seems to be that way Danzo-sama, Itachi answered as he rose to his feet. The tone of his commander's last words told him that this meeting was over and that he would resume his current mission until further notice. However, once the Uchiha prodigy vanished into the darkness, Danzo reopened the file on his desk and began reading it once again. Uzumaki Naruto, otherwise known as the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, your time will come and your power will be mine, the scarred man vowed before burning the report in the fire behind him, having already recorded the contents to memory. 5 years and 364 days later. Yuka, more wine. A rather tipsy Uchiha yelled across the room as his chair tipped back dangerously. All Naruto had to do was kick the back legs of the drunkard's chair and presto, instant retribution. However, if nearly 6 years of serving and slaving under his Uchiha employers taught him anything, it taught him patience. Naruto sadly admitted he had swallowed his pride several times in the face of his contracted oppressors or employers, but he always got them back. Just like he would get them back for this humiliation, he just had to decide when he would do it again, either in the dead of night or in some less conspicuous manner. However, before Naruto could even think about getting back at the past drunk, a firm hand landed on his shoulder. Don't even think about it. I didn't come here to see you forge another work contract with the Uchiha, a gruff voice called out from behind him. Before Naruto could even turn around, a pungent odor assaulted his nose, which he later realized was from the cigarette the man was smoking. And who are you? Naruto asked shrewdly, feeling no inclination of being polite to him, since the man offended his nose, so he felt no inclination to be polite to him. Sarutobi Asuma, and the one set by the Hokage himself to make sure you didn't do anything stupid, again, the older man whispered harshly as he led the younger boy back to his table. Grudgingly, Naruto sped up, not wanting to ruin his one piece of clothing that was actually worth some sort of value. The kimono was a traditional set, the only difference being the color. His top was a deep orange bordering on rusty brown that matched the native tiger coats, complemented by the thin black lines running down its length, while his leggings were a softer orange, not unlike the orange sherbet that they were serving as expensive imported desserts. Finally, his black obi and zori, flip-flops, tied in together with the tiger look he was going for, making him generally pleased with the outfit. Noticing that Naruto stopped resisting, Asuma lightened his grip as they arrived at his table and to his impatient-looking host. "You get the drinks?" the anxious-looking woman asked, feeling even jitterier by the second. "Sorry Kurenai-chan, but duty called," Asuma shot back with a smile, while pointing his thumb back at the blonde trailing behind him. Naruto just watched, confused as the elegant woman in front of him pouted quietly as a light hue of red painted her cheeks. Naruto got even more confused when Asuma just laughed and continued to jest with the woman, making the red on her cheeks grow larger and larger. "Wait a second, isn't this the part where she decks him for being annoying? I mean that's what always happens to me when I talk to Sakura for any more than a little while," Naruto thought as he desperately tried to figure out the scene in front of him. "Believe me kid, the girls your age are a lot more complicated than women my age," Asuma said, as if answering Naruto's unasked question. "So, are you saying I'm easy?" Kurenai asked coyly, eyes glinting like a cobra eyes a rabbit. No, I'm just commenting on that far-off expression he had on his face. Believe me, I know it too well, because I can vaguely remember myself having it not too long ago, when I used to think about a certain red-eyed girl I knew," the large man answered hastily, all the while rubbing the back of his head and waving a hand in defense, hoping that his anecdote would satisfy his insinuating host. "Good save, anyways, since my lazy friend here is too much of a slouch to introduce me, I'm Yuhi Kurenai," the red-eyed woman said after she turned her attention to Naruto. "Uzumaki Naruto, ma'am," Naruto managed to stutter out, completely shocked by the beauty of the woman in front on him. It wasn't that he hadn't known she was pretty, but when he got a good look at her, it all hit him at once. Her midnight shaded hair came down to the top of her shoulder blades, framing her heart-shaped face, while drawing attention to her striking red eyes. Her eyes weren't as frightening as the Uchiha Sharingan, but it still held the clan's hypnotic light, as if it were compelling him under her will. "Hey, don't get any ideas pal, I had to fight many jonin just to get a chance to come here as a guest," Asuma interrupted jokingly as he put his arm around Kurenai protectively. Between stammering out apologies to the embarrassed Kunoichi, Naruto realized how well the couple complemented each other. Asuma's kimono top midnight black matched Kurenai's hair and decorated with a lone monkey in the midst of a budding tree, whereas Kurenai's white kimono top was decorated with crimson flowers in varying stages of blossoming, as if furthering the artist image from Asuma's top. "Don't let him intimidate you, the guy's a big softy, and if he doesn't stop soon, I'm gonna to tell everyone his nickname." "Isn't that right Kuma-chan?" Kurenai said sweetly before whispering the last part menacingly to Asuma. "So teddy bear is it, I'm so filing that away for future blackmail," Naruto thought menacingly as another thought popped into Naruto's mind. It bugged him that Kurenai's eyes were unnatural, not only that, but he suspected it had a connection to why she was present at the Uchiha's banquet. "Excuse me Yuhi-san, why are your eyes?" Naruto asked politely, half because he was asking such a personal question and the other half because she was drop-dead gorgeous. "Kurenai will be just fine, but my eyes are like this because my family is a very distant cousin to the Uchiha, but close enough that I have to suffer through all of their boring parties," Kurenai answered before going off on a small private rant of the parties she had to endure just because of her last. "So, your eyes are like that because of some distant ancestor? Does that mean you have the Sharingan?" Naruto asked curiously, the topics of family history always an interest to him, mainly because he never had one of his own. However, being able to dream on how kick-ass his family may have been always made him feel better. "No, these are cosmetic only. However, my great-grandmother was in Uchiha and among the first to migrate to Konoha when they settled with the Senju to form our village. During that time, my grandmother married out of the clan, something that was strictly forbidden, but because she was so powerful and had friends in the right places, she was allowed to leave," Kurenai added, always willing to teach an eager student. "Important people. I didn't think there was anyone important enough to force the Uchiha into letting someone go against them, other than the Hokage that is. Well, it helps that my grandmother's cousin was Madara. No, it was Madara, my great-grandmother's cousin was Uchiha Madara. Sorry, almost everything about the guy was destroyed or classified," Kurenai stated while shaking her head. "Why is that?" "It is because he jeopardized all of Konoha and because of his actions, our first Hokage had to retire from the injuries he sustained during their battle," Kurenai concluded darkly. "Well, when I become Hokage, I'll make sure nothing like that ever happens," Naruto exclaimed brazenly. Kurenai smiled, somehow this kid's utter confidence almost made her believe not all his claims were just words. Well, you'll have to graduate from the academy first, and from what I hear your testing and tactical skills are subpar, Kurenai said, thinking fast on how to euphemize what she heard. That didn't slow the sunny-haired boy, in fact it hadn't fazed him in the slightest. Yeah, but my taijutsu, kunai, and jutsu skills are all passing, so I hope it evens out this time, Naruto retorted haughtily, not too happy that the talk about his dream turned into talking about his shortcomings. What do you mean this time? You are only 12, so there's no way you could have failed the exam, Kurenai asked suspiciously, eyes narrowing at the thought of a conspiracy. Actually, I failed twice. First time because I didn't score a perfect on my kunai exam, and the second because I got hit once on my taijutsu exam, however, I think if I score a perfect on all the practical parts I can pass, Naruto answered truthfully. And why would try so hard to graduate early? Aren't you afraid that you won't be placed on a team with any of your friends? Meh, the only people that aren't complete asses to me are the weird girl who always stares at me, Hinata I think, and Tenten, and she's in the class ahead of me, Naruto answered truthfully once again, before the same thought went through both adults' minds. The village's hatred for the Kyuubi filtered down to this generation, as well it seems the two thought before sharing it with one another. Both felt the urge to give the boy at least some advice, so that he may take a step towards his dream. Hey kid, instead of betting all your money on one horse, try investing a bit more on your weakest area, Asuma offered, confusing Naruto. What he means is how about you spend a bit more time studying and a bit less time trying to get a perfect score. A perfectly fit but ignorant ninja is a lot less effective than a well-rounded ninja, Kurenai amended. Meh, tomorrow's the exam and I doubt any amount of studying will help, and believe me, I've tried. For some reason though, it just never sticks, not like the physical stuff, Naruto offered quietly, as if talking more to himself than to the two jonin. Feeling for the blonde, the two made sure that Naruto had fun that night and took his mind off the exam. I'm sorry Naruto, you fail, Iruka uttered solemnly. As an instructor it was his job to be as unbiased of a judge as possible, but to see his favorite student fail, just because he hadn't passed a written test tugged at his heartstrings. But I scored perfects on my taijutsu, accuracy, and jutsu exams. C5 Bunshin. Naruto cried desperately, with 5 intangible clones behind him to amplify his plea. Naruto studied like Asuma and Kurenai advised, he really had, but like he said it never stuck, and when he woke up in the morning, he couldn't remember anything he spent the night memorizing. Ignoring the laughing kids in the hall, Naruto stared hard into his instructor, no his big brother's eyes, begging him to make an exception just this once, for him, the boy who was like his little brother. I'm sorry Naruto I can't. I just can't, because if anything ever happened to you during a mission because you didn't know something I wouldn't be able to bear it, Iruka thought sadly, before he tore his gaze away from the blonde's eyes. Feeling shut out, Naruto dragged his feet all the way to his favorite swing. Plopping down onto the worn wooden seat, Naruto knew he was going to be there for a while, but he refused to acknowledge the jeers from his peers passing him, embracing their families, buying gloat. You know, Iruka only does it because he cares for you, a strangely understanding voice called from behind him. Turning to face the owner of the sympathetic words, Naruto steeled his face behind his emotionless mask and let his chakra signature disappear into nothingness. The cold mask of indifference and utter apathy would be his defense against any possible joke or jest, and sadly, he learned that defense from years of being treated as if he were invisible. What do you want Mizuki-sensei? Scary if I wasn't looking at him, I wouldn't even know he was here, the silver-haired Chunin thought to himself before reasserting his smile. For this to work and for him to complete his mission, he would need to gain the boy's trust, and then, and only then, would he get his reward. They tell you that Iruka is only being the best sensei that he can, and he doesn't want you to enter the shinobi world unprepared, and that he's offering you a second chance, Mizuki said slyly. If he was going to catch this fish, he was going to have to bait his hook just right. And what does he want me to do? Naruto asked excitedly, instantly perking up at the chance to redeem himself. Gotcha was all Mizuki could think as he gave Naruto the directions to the scroll. It's done sir, the boy is on his way to the scroll as we speak, a panting Mizuki managed to get out as he kneeled before his supervisor and thinking of his reward. The power of the forbidden scroll in my hand, soon those fools will pay for forcing me to work at the school with those snot-nosed brats, and most of all, the demon, Mizuki thought evilly as a malevolent grin spread across his features. Are you sure the boy understood the directions? Danzo, the conspirator behind this whole mess, asked. Yes, and he will be at the appointed place within an hour. Now about my payment, Mizuki started before a wave of killing intent hit him. It's been said that a man's killing intent is a measure of his combined intelligence, strength, and experiences. Danzo's killing intent was like no other Mizuki felt, and if he had to describe it in words, he would say it was like a bottomless well of death and destruction. However, this wasn't like the random marauding of some demon, no, with Danzo's it was a precise tool of a seasoned veteran and shrewd mastermind. You would be wise to learn your place, Mizuki, otherwise something unfortunate may happen before you receive your reward, Danzo uttered, not even looking up from his paper. The Chunin managed to nod, as he didn't trust his voice at the moment. An eternity of awkward silence passed between the two, however, only Mizuki seemed to notice until Danzo cleared his throat and rose to his feet. Even with his cane, the man's movements were as graceful as a predator, and to the bowing Chunin watching the man circle around his desk was like watching one of Konoha's native tigers circle around his wounded and weakened body. The poor boy was scared shitless. Mizuki, you have done well, despite your impatience, and I for one am not without empathy. Therefore, I will give you your reward now, Danzo said coyly before focusing his killer intent on the bowing Chunin. If the man could freeze up any more than he did, and with agonizing slowness, he raised his gaze to meet his commander's gaze. Sir, what are you? Giving you your reward, the scarred man answered simply before a glint of metal flew through the air. The barely seen kunai sliced through Mizuki's neck without any resistance. Mizuki hardly even registered the pain as shock set in, and he raised an unsteady hand to his neck, confirming what his mind had been telling him. But why, sir, was all the silver-haired conspirer could think before looking back up to his master, his vision bleeding red. Pant, pant, pant. Naruto had been running. He had been running all the way from the Hokage's tower toward to the designated place, a place he hadn't known existed until Mizuki told him about it. The Uchiha Library, home to some of the most coveted abilities in the whole village, hid another secret in the vast halls of knowledge. It hid the tomb of a man he only learned about the day prior. It was the tomb of the great Uchiha Madara. Despised as he was for his treachery, he was still famed for having the most powerful Sharingan in all of his clan, which alone warranted hiding his body away from all of mankind. Not many knew of the tomb's location, but apparently Iruka had, and somehow he found it necessary to tell Mizuki in order to tell him. That alone made Naruto more than suspicious, and being Uzumaki Naruto, the boy acted on those suspicions. No, Jinjutsu no, and what's this Kage Bunshin? A solid duplication of your being that uses compressed air around it to render itself on the physical plane. Without proper reinforcement, clones will disperse at the slightest disturbance. Use this technique with the utmost care and wisdom, as inexperienced users must split their chakra to complete the jutsu. Masters can effectively choose how much chakra to give a clone. Masters of the splitting art can create explosions out of their clones with the help of another seal. Reinforcement, splitting, detonation techniques go as following blah blah blah. When am I going to get to that exploding clone part I read about? Naruto whispered hotly as he hid in one of the darkest regions of the Uchiha Library. He traveled quicker than intended mainly because of his suspicions, and with his spare time, he hid in the least likely place where people would find him, as he looked for a bit of insurance, in case Mizuki's offer turned out to be more than it was made out to be. Besides Henge, Kawarimi, and Bunshin only get you so far, Naruto thought wryly as he attempted the Kage Bunshin for the first time. The chakra drainage was intense, but he quickly adapted to it as he performed it more and more, until the jutsu's activation became like a faint tickle in the back of his mind, and the chakra loss was far from noticeable. I guess I should write down to the reinforcement part and a few other things, seeing as I have the splitting part down. Damn, I wish I had more time with this scroll, otherwise I may be Hokage sooner than I thought, Naruto thought as he found pen and paper to write with, before renewing his search for the hidden tomb. As if right out of a movie, the tomb's entrance was hidden behind a bookshelf resting against a wall. Grabbing the book title, A Conspiracy. Well, there will be no Uchiha Hokage, Naruto figured this was the best place to hide the switch, as no self-respecting Uchiha would ever read this book. The books shifted silently as they made a passage to the world beyond the wall, and he descended into the dark dank crypt. Wow, this Madara must have been a colossal ass, because I don't even see one bouquet of dead flowers, the blonde thought jokingly to quell his fear. His senses were on high alert, but even his unusually sharp eyes couldn't see a thing in the place. It was as if the place was under that forbidden darkness Jinjutsu he just copied. Groping along the walls, Naruto's hand brushed against a rough rising of stone, which turned out to be a lighting seal that illuminated the whole place. Glad you could make it, and on time for once, Naruto-kun, Mizuki's voice called out from the end of the corridor. His back was to Naruto, and his hands were behind him. In a ninja tense, he was completely harmless, however, something about his greeting set alarms off in Naruto's head. Wait a second, Mizuki never calls me Naruto-kun, and what's with the dramatic stance? Mizuki was always tactless at best, and a complete dumbass without help. This stinks of a setup, Naruto thought as he kept his distance. Who are you? And where is Iruka-sensei? Naruto asked cautiously, hoping he didn't aggravate Mizuki. Damn, something must have tipped him off. I need to finish this now before someone finds me, Mizuki thought as he turned around and let a handful of kunai fly. Naruto was so shocked he almost didn't react, but at the last second, something kicked in, and the preteen activated a shadow clone to take the hit. The clone dispelled in a poof of smoke, temporarily hindering Mizuki's view. The Chunin scanned the corridor quietly, his expert senses straining to detect the slightest moment or flicker of chakra. "Naruto, are you down here?" Another voice called out from the end of the hall. From the flickering shadows of the chakra-fed lights, both combatants could tell that the intruder was Iruka, but only one could react to his presence. Wish. And so Mizuki's kunai cut through the air, almost silent in its flight towards the unsuspecting Chunin. "Iruka-sensei, look out." Naruto yelled from his hinged hiding spot on the wall. Leaping to grab the flying dagger, Naruto's hand caught air as the knife sailed by him, directly on course for his teacher's neck. However, because of his student's warning, Iruka was able to dodge easily and was already in the middle of a set of hand seals. "Brat, Oten. Doryuheki." And like that, a wall of hardened earth rose from the ground, blocking most of the hallway with its girth. Iruka knew the wall would hold strong against a few kunai, but anything else would pierce through it, especially since he put the bare minimum amount of chakra into the jutsu. "So, you want to play like that? Naruto, get back." The Chunin yelled desperately after hearing Mizuki's words, but the traitorous Chunin's Fuuma Shuriken was already grinding its way around the earthen wall. Naruto's eyes went wide as the buzzing blade made its way towards his face before stopping, only to be in the grasp of one grim-faced Iruka. "Don't worry, I will protect you, Naruto-kun," the Chunin said while sparing the boy a smile before adding another seal to his jutsu. "Oten. Doryuden." Iruka shouted as his wall collapsed and shot itself forward in large clumps of hardened clay. Mizuki was forced to jump to evade the rock-hard projectiles, only to have his own shuriken slice him in half before erupting into smoke. Scanning the area, Iruka knew he could win this battle if only he could find his opponent. "Hairless," the words were like a soft caress on Iruka's neck before pain erupted in his back. "This isn't Mizuki," were the last thoughts of the Chunin as his strength left his body. "Iruka-sensei." Naruto yelled as his teacher slumped to the ground. Acting quickly, Naruto caught his teacher before twisting his body so that his back would absorb Mizuki's killing stroke, all before bursting into smoke as well. "I'm out, brat, or do you want me to kill your defenseless teacher here?" Mizuki taunted, only to see Naruto standing at the mouth of the corridor, his face grim and body shaking with anger. "I'm not hiding, bastard," Naruto ground out between clenched teeth. Mizuki had hurt one of the only people that gave a damn about him, and for that he would pay with his life. "Well, it seems the demon is angry. Are you going to destroy the rest of the village now?" Mizuki asked mockingly. "Oh, don't hide it, you know what I mean. You must remember all the lives you ended and all the others you destroyed by killing their loved ones," Mizuki stated harshly and mockingly before laughing to some dark, twisted joke. "Mizuki, you mustn't," Iruka pleaded desperately as he gripped the man's leg. A swift kick to the head was all that was needed to quiet Iruka and further push Naruto's anger to the end, so much that the child's eyes began to bleed red. "Shut up, you hypocrite. Of anyone, you should be the happiest that I plan to kill this boy, seeing as he killed your parents," Mizuki stated before looked into Naruto's shocked eyes. "You boy, hated demon brat, are the Kyuubi no Kitsune in the flesh. Locked away from all the power you are trying to tap into," Mizuki said callously as he raised his kunai high. Seeing his intent, Naruto burst into action, hands flying into the seal for the cage bunshin and his legs pumping as fast as possible. Instantly, 5 clones appeared ahead of him, airborne and ready to take Mizuki's head off with their kunai, but as quickly as they were formed, they disappeared by the man's taijutsu and kunai work. However, Naruto's true intent was accomplished and he closed the distance between him and the traitor without Iruka dying. Leaping forward, Naruto released all his kai in hopes that it would freeze Mizuki up long enough for him to go in for the kill. The Chunin was unfazed and Naruto found himself hanging by his collar. Well, isn't this ironic? A demon trying to defend the man whose parents he murdered. "You know, I think if you keep trying that you may even fool Kami into letting you into heaven," Mizuki said with a laugh as his chakra-imbued kunai tore through Naruto's jacket and undershirt alike, thus revealing the Kyuubi seal. Baying the seal with a calculating gaze, Mizuki's eyes landed on the coiled center of the seal that was shining with surging yauki. "Do you know what would happen if I plunged this kunai into your stomach?" Mizuki asked in dark humor. A lob of spit to the cheek was his only answer, and in disdain, he wiped the foul bodily fluid off his face with a sneer. "I guess you'll find out the hard way." "That's again, bastard." Naruto cried as his lurking shadow clone pounded the traitor in the back of the neck, jarring his brain just long enough to break the genjutsu on him, thus revealing the slash on his neck and killing the man. However, the man's last action was already in motion and his kunai found itself in Naruto's soft underbelly. The pain was unlike anything he felt before. It was as if waves of searing fire were surging through every pore in his body, filling them with more power than imaginable, but all the while destroying them from the inside out. Looking over his body frantically as the red energy began to creep away from his stomach and claim more and more of his flesh under its crimson hue. Try as he might, Naruto could not stop the oncoming surge of yauki as it reached his neck on its steady march upward. A strangled cry died in his throat as the Yauki claimed his vocal cords before the crimson wave reached his cerulean eyes and the blonde's vision bled red as well. "It is done," Itachi spoke into the darkness as he slid a sealed memory slip onto his superior's desk. He was back in Danzo's office, garbed in his Anbu armor and a traveling cloak for the journey ahead of him. In his knapsack were his few valuables. A journal, a kunai and a picture. The journal was the personal log of his life and perhaps the one thing that kept him sane. The kunai was his very first flying dagger, and with it, he learned the way of the shinobi, perfected his superb technique, as well as taken his first kill. The last lump in his bag brought him to his picture and his only remaining tie to his previous life with his clan. Maybe it was his last bit of remaining humanity clinging into his, now, forever altered mind, or it could have been a mere reminder of the world he left behind, but the photo captured him and his family. Mother, brother, and father included, in a still shot of a time when everything had been right. "And it will be once again," Itachi added silently as he watched his superior gaze into his eyes. A moment afterwards, his eyes refocused from witnessing Itachi's exploits firsthand. "Excellent work, Itachi, it seems I can still trust one subordinate to finish a job," Danzo uttered as 6 years of meticulous planning came to fruition. The Uzumaki brat foiled his first attempt to rid Konoha of the Uchiha, but the fox boy's actions may have been a blessing in disguise. During those 6 years of reconstruction, the Uchiha, as well as the Hokage, became lax in their ways, relying heavily on the world's contentment with peace to solve all their problems. In that era of judgment, he was able to systematically lift the black ops surveillance the Nidaime placed on the targeted clan without any warranted suspicion from his blasted rival, Sarutobi. This made Itachi's task infinitely easier, so instead of the Uchiha prodigy having to avoid any suspicious eyes during the fateful night, he was disarming Seal Ray's already knew. He then went on with murdering the legendary clan one by one in their sleep, whilst the rest of the village lie in the cover of chaos that the fox boy had inadvertently given them. Phase 1 is complete, and we may be better off than I originally anticipated, Danzo thought, as his mind wandered to the, now traumatically scarred Uchiha survivor. Sasuke was older than the original intended date, which gave him a better chance to deal with the mental assault of the loss than when he was 6 years younger. However, with his age came a far lesser chance for him to cope with the loss if he went off the deep end. Another task Itachi handled perfectly, Danzo thought as he recalled the 3 days of constant torture. Itachi put the younger Uchiha through his personal hell. "You know what the rest of the mission is, Itachi. Failure will not be tolerated," Danzo said in a dismissing nature, before giving one last glance to his young protege. "Hi, Danzo-sama," was all the stoic boy could say. Dismissed, and with that, the executioner of the famed Uchiha clan escaped into the night. Chapter 3. Learning Curve. Naruto found himself floating in a sea of red, so vast that if someone told him that the Crimson Ocean stretched to eternity and back, he would have believed it. However, it would be rather difficult to contact anyone in his current predicament, given that he didn't have a body to call his own. No, Naruto could only describe himself as being he was like a sentient mass of blue stranded in a scarlet desert in which there was no end to. Sentient, when did I learn that word? Naruto marveled apathetically as he floated on, no destination in mind and no end in sight. It was strange, but the lost blonde found that even though he was adrift and confused, he had never been able to think more clearly in his life. It was as if a veil had been lifted over his mind, and in being completely stripped of all direction, he found that whatever intelligent part of him that hid away from him for more than a decade finally came to life. "I guess I am as much a paradox in myself as a human body housing the soul and essence of a demon," Naruto chuckled humorlessly as Mizuki's words rung painfully in the back of his mind. Pieces of his past fell together like a completed puzzle, and the mystery and hurt that surrounded all the missed birthdays, cold stares, and whispered insults finally made complete sense. It made so much sense that Naruto felt pained that he hadn't figured it out earlier. Even if he was Uzumaki Naruto, whatever that amounted to, he was bound to the spirit of the Kitsune, the essence of his home's destroyer, like a falling man is bound to gravity. Upon that realization, Naruto had never felt more crushed in his life. Maybe Mizuki was right, maybe I am the Kyuubi. Then what would that make me? A small voice called from the fiery abyss. Inquisitive in nature, Naruto's mind worked overtime to discover the origins of the voice, in hopes to find the intruder to his solitude and possibly an escape from this sea of blood. "It seems you still have some fight left in you. I was beginning to worry that you wouldn't make it, especially once you started to get all philosophical on me," the voice continued, irking more of Naruto's curiosity into action. "Who are you?" The blue mask called out, tentatively testing his connection to the other being. Frustrated that his, now clearer, mind had ran into an obstacle, Naruto resorted to his old ways and confronted the being up front, fearing that nothing could be worse than the lonely world he had been cast into. "By the Kyuubi no Kitsune, of course," the voice answered mischievously, before the red ocean contorted violently and all went black. Sarutobi sighed into his pipe, thus exhaling a larger than normal plume of smoke. a deadly habit smoking was censored. Blackened the lungs, weakened the heart, and overall made a field shinobi far less effective. However, to the stresses of the village leader, chain smoking seemed to be the least of his and his family's sins, and in this case, those stresses seemed to be a direct result of one of his past transgressions. He had turned a blind eye to the Uchiha and their activities. Before him laid out Uchiha Itachi's official reasons for destroying his clan and becoming the greatest Nukenin behind his former apprentice Orochimaru himself. However, unlike the Snake Sannin before him, Itachi's reasons weren't so selfish. In his confession, Itachi claimed that his clan had been planning a coup and an assassination on his very own life. Details included that he, Itachi, would be the clinching piece as his Anbu status would give him crucial information on the Hokage's personal guard and allow the Uchiha more maneuverability around their age-old watchers. Rereading the confession, many things crossed the Hokage's mind. One being that the boy was a genius of nearly unprecedented caliber because to be able to thwart a plan spanning over a decade in preparation required skill, possibly even more skill than killing a clan of copycat ninja. Sarutobi almost regretted losing a ninja of that capacity. However, the second and far more foreboding thought that came to Sarutobi's mind was the window in which the Uchiha were destroyed. The boy may be a genius, but he held neither the power nor the position to pull as many strings as a job such as this required. Itachi chronicled 6 years of changes in Anbu security, as well as the warding of the Uchiha complex, both of those pieces of classified information that only the Anbu commander and Hokage could lay eyes on. Sarutobi knew that he couldn't touch any fellow conspirators due to Itachi's confession. Damn you Danzo, the Hokage thought wearily as the thought of an enemy as old and powerful as the root commander made his bones ache with age. In this battlefield, physical prowess wasn't enough, one needed to be 1 step ahead to survive and 2 steps ahead to win. Currently, Danzo had 3 steps on Sarutobi. Rising from his chair, Sarutobi's mind wandered to the grim aftermath of the prior night's chaos. In his hands were 2 files, each containing a thorough update on each of its subject's current condition. Opening the first portfolio, Sarutobi's eyes narrowed as he skimmed over the contents yet again. Uchiha Sasuke would be undergoing a month-long rehabilitation session with the village's leading psychiatrist in order to evaluate his mental health and to find whether or not he was suitable for military service. Sarutobi cringed slightly when he recalled what put the boy in such condition, but then again it was either this or death, as there was no subtlety when dealing with a fully powered Tsukiyomi mind assault. Inwardly, Sarutobi marveled at his namesake's fortitude, as for one so young to survive and not fall into a terminal coma was a miracle in itself. Alas, he doubted that anyone, especially Sasuke, would see the light in that. Closing the folder with another larger than normal plume of smoke exiting his pipe, Sarutobi opened the second portfolio that was significantly larger than the first. And the headache it's causing seems proportional to its size as well, the Hokage joked to himself as he tried to lighten his mood as he read over the files yet again. Uzumaki Naruto, container of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, had been hospitalized shortly after the dubbed Uchiha massacre. As was found alongside one fatally poisoned Yumi no Ruka, Academy Chunin and ex-Anbu agent, on the scene of the massacre, unconscious and body overflowing with Yauki. Hadn't the chamber the two been found and sealed with some sort of energy suppression wards, the wizened Hokage knew that the whole village would have Naruto overloading his Tenketsu with Yauki, and he'd be dealing with calls for the boy's death, as well as the current situation among other things. However, not having to deal with ignorant fools seemed to be one of the only few silver linings that came with this situation, because Naruto now entered a delicate position. Essentially, an outside force shattered the 13-year-old seal the Yondaime had died grafting onto Naruto. That force was a chakra-altered poison kunai, which was intended to not only kill Naruto, but also release the Kyuubi from its bounds while doing so. It was clear that whomever they were dealing with was incredibly informed and had access to highly sensitive and secret intelligence. However, what disturbed the Sandaime the most was that attempt failed, and given the side report he received from the recently revived academy teacher, something smelled even fishier than the whole situation. "Okage-sama, how long have you been here?" a voice called from behind the cage. Despite the fact that he hadn't been aware of the person's presence until he was behind him, Sarutobi had nothing to fear, since the owner of the voice was one of his most loyal Anbu and personal protege to himself, Yumi no Ruka. The ex-Anbu turned Chunin was heavily bandaged around the torso, and his head was wrapped with a tight layer of gauze over it. "Not long, Aruka-kun," the Hokage replied as he looked down at the boy in question. Naruto's body had long since stopped glowing in that eerie red light that forced both of the shinobi to recall one of their greatest fears. However, the relief that had come over them when the red haze vanished had been quickly replaced with worry when the boy's body started undergoing radical changes. "I see that the convulsions stopped," Haruka muttered lightly, belying the worry he had for the blonde he had come to see as a younger brother. Shortly after the Yaki receded into Naruto's body, the blonde began having strange muscle contractions, or as the mednin called it, controlled seizures. For the greater part of the night, Naruto's body would spasm out of control as his muscles compacted repeatedly before he would stop, rest, and start the process all over again. Between the controlled seizures, mednin would come and check on the boy, hoping to find some sort of answer for the bizarre phenomena, only to find that the boy's physiology altered exponentially after each contraction. With each contraction came something new, starting with incredibly malleable muscles. This change was compounded with every following change, and before the medical experts could even begin diagnosing Naruto, they found that the blonde's body was something in which they've never seen. It was as if the blonde's body was made to be a shinobi. He had nerves that formed clusters within his four main appendages resembling ganglia for increased reaction time, a denser bone structure to withstand more punishment and carry heavier loads, an incredible circulatory system that not only carried more oxygen, but also did it with nearly twice as much efficiency as any normal shinobi, let alone a normal human. Those were just the obvious things, and from what the mednin predicted, Naruto's hormone and other biochemical activities had been altered as well, which could produce unforeseeable phenomena in times of stress, growth, or other activities. Yes, they have, and just in time too, as you would have probably died if it weren't for the seal cracking the way it did, the Hokage added, while recalling another change the blonde had endured. As a result of the Shiki Fuin collapsing, many subsequent seals under it gave way, resulting in various chain reactions as Naruto's Tenketsu overloaded with Yaki. Many of the effects were harmless, and a few life-threatening ones, however, the Yaki purge settled almost all of them save for one. The fourth had put a conversion seal under the Shiki Fuin, which was intended to harness the restorative properties of Yaki and align them for normal chakra usage. It was the reason Naruto healed so fast, without the direct aid and use of the demonic energy. However, when that seal broke and the Yaki flowed into Naruto's system, a strange phenomena occurred. The seal created another set of Tenketsu within Naruto's normal set that specifically made to channel highly refined medical chakra. It was as if the surge of Yaki combined with the conversion seal burned another set of chakra wiring into Naruto's existing set, which then resulted in another pool of chakra forming. Albeit the chakra pool was smaller than the boy's normal reserves, about the size of a healthy chunin at the moment, mainly due to inactivity, but the use of a chakra pool solely for healing would be a godsend to any shinobi, especially one built as uniquely as Naruto. Good thing the boy can heal himself now, because I doubt anyone other than Tsunade would have the expertise to help him. Now the Sandaime mused as his mind traveled to the other benefits of Naruto's new chakra. The healing chakra, as it was dubbed by a few of the younger mednin, was incredibly sensitive to not only manipulation, but what was happening in the boy's body as well. Therefore, upon its formation, it immediately went to counteracting the poison coursing through Naruto's veins, neutralizing it without any of the boy's active engagement. Yet another marvel many would think, but that wasn't the half of it. The chakra encrypted the poison's antidote into codons in the boy's DNA structure, granting him immunity to it, giving the doctors a stocked antidote for others housed within the boy's body. It was because of that fact alone that Iruka was still alive, and one of the main reasons why so many of the mednin leaders were demanding the boy train to become one of them. If they knew who the boy's mother was, they wouldn't have to worry about that, Sarutobi added, sparing a brief moment to remember a woman with a fiery attitude and the hair to match, before a foreboding thought made its way into the forefront of his aged mind. Despite all the good the incident had done for Naruto's body, essentially giving him a clean slate, doctors found that the reason Naruto hadn't awoken yet was because of a chakra imbalance in his head. Particularly in a pocket of Yaki lingering in the areas where higher thought took place. Okage-sama, I'm sure he'll pull through, Naruto has the greatest will out of anyone in Konoha, Iruka attested, catching on to the reason for the Hokage's sudden change in temperament. It was only natural that Iruka understood the man like a son. He had spent several years learning from the Great Cage after his parents' deaths during the Kyuubi's rampage. Yes, I know as well as you that Naruto's will is one of a kind, but given the recent circumstances, the Hokage said before cutting himself off, unwilling to finish his sentence. I know your duty as Hokage will call you to make any sacrifice for the village, as mine as a shinobi of Konoha will call me to do the same. However, I have the utmost faith in Naruto, Iruka finished, knowing if Naruto didn't pull through, then it would be up to them to make sure the fox didn't return to finish what it started. For ours and Naruto's sake, I hope you're right, Iruka-kun, the Hokage muttered as he expelled another plume of smoke and continued to stare at the sleeping blonde. Plop, plop, plop. Naruto's face contorted into a scowl as the ever-increasing annoyance of water dripping on his forehead continued to aggravate his weary mind. Trying to force the annoyance in the back of his mind with no avail, Naruto rolled over and nearly drowned himself in the process. Sputtering on the water that choked him to death, Naruto sat up, eyes remaining shut as he did his breathing exercises in hopes to rein in his raging temper. He got to about 3 before he blew his stack. Not again. How many times do I have to ask my damn landlord to fix that hole in the roofing before he finally gets off his ass and does it? Naruto asked no one in particular, thus venting off some of his frustration. He endured the steadily growing hole in his roof for over 6 months now, and each time he brought it up to the landlord, the old man would just give him a creepy glare and rant on about how busy he was. Which was a lie, seeing as Naruto saw him nearly every day drinking himself to sleep while on his way to the academy in the wee hours of the morning. Cursing again, Naruto realized that something was strange about his room, then again it wasn't every day that he heard his thoughts bounce off the walls, as if he shouted them to the Hokage's monument. Tilting his head to the ceiling, Naruto's eyes fluttered open, and it was then that he realized he wasn't in his room. Hell, he wasn't in his apartment complex, or even any housing structure for that matter, he was in a godforsaken sewer, and after doing a quick overview of himself, he found that he was naked on top of that as well. Great first I get knocked out by that bastard Mizuki, and next I find myself in a sewer. What's next? I find myself in the company of all the past Hokages, and find that I'm related to all of them either some way or another. Naruto asked himself only to find that his thoughts were once again echoing around him mocking, much to his growing irritation. Well, you'll have to settle for meeting me, a familiar voice called out. Breaking his neck, Naruto's vision snapped onto the darkened half of the sewer. Letting his eyes take in the sights, Naruto immediately noticed the damp floor and walls that housed the cracked blue pipes and large red pipes running through both the illuminated halves of the sewer. As he speculated what the pipes were, or after careful consideration represented, a lithe figure slipped out from the black abyss and into Naruto's line of sight. The blonde's attention shifted immediately, and his ninja training kicked in. Paying no mind to his current situation, his lack of gear and more importantly clothes, Naruto's eyes scanned over the being in front of him, searching for anything that may help him identify what he could be up against. He quickly concluded that if the person in front of him was a threat, they must have been from outside the village, because no one in Konoha had bright auburn hair, russet eyes, and such a large cup size. Pausing at the last trait, it finally occurred to Naruto that his opponent was naked and female. Embarrassment quickly filled the boy, and instead of preparing himself for a fight, he quickly attempted to cover himself from view. Modest are we? Endearing as that may be, I've lived long enough to know the secrets of a body such as this. However, I will add that I've never seen a body quite as much potential as yours, the woman called out with a chuckling as she raised an eyebrow to Naruto's antics. The body such as this you speak as if you aren't human, Naruto uttered quietly, so quietly that the woman actually had tried to hear him as he mumbled to himself. In the very short period since he woke up, Naruto once again found himself noticing things that would have eluded him otherwise. Not to mention that he was using words he had only heard in context and never really took the time to fully understand what they meant. Unfortunately, his widened vernacular was the least of his worries, as an amused sigh emanated from the woman in front of him, beckoning his attention back to her. Yes, I am not human, in fact, I am probably one of the furthest things from human. I am a Yaoki, and as I've said before, I am the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the redhead stated with a smirk, her eyes looking into Naruto's defiantly. A gaze Naruto eagerly returned, the only thing was that his had a surprising amount of venom behind his. So, this is your doing then Kitsuneikik, fox bitch, just like all the other harm you've done to me. Naruto accused heatedly. He didn't shout, but his words held as much fire and passion as if he had. The only thing was that instead of hot anger he normally displayed to anyone and anything in his way, Naruto's face, eyes, and aura were that of cold fury, the trait reserved for those who truly deserved it. And in Naruto's book, destroying half the leaf, orphaning hundreds, and taking the life of his hero and inspiration, definitely qualified Kyuubi for his rage. Don't be so presumptuous to believe that your life is the only thing that was at stake. Yes, you and your village suffered because of me, but have you ever thought why that may have happened? Kyuubi countered, quickly throwing Naruto off guard. The blonde had expected angry shouts and dramatic shifts in appearance to fit the demonic image he had in his head, but there was nothing of the sort. All that was there was a tense silence that lingered after the question, more like challenge, that Kyuubi stated and Naruto's subsequent confusion. I'll take your silence as an apology for calling me something so heinous and frankly unwarranted. If anything, you may call me Kyuubi as for someone I've known for so long, shouldn't have to use pretenses and honorifics with me, the fox woman uttered, confusing Naruto yet again. Known for so long? I've only met you minutes ago. Naruto refuted vehemently, the mere idea of being associated with a demon turning his stomach. You misunderstand, you may not have known me, but I have known you ever since your birth and my imprisonment. I've watched your every move Naruto, your every prank, your every meal, your every laugh however, I have also been there for your every lonely tear, every cry for help, and every saddening thought as well. Honestly Naruto, if anyone can say they know you it's me, the fox demon said evenly. As strange as it may seem, Kyuubi was telling the truth. She could honestly say that she knew Naruto better than anyone, because unlike the rest of the world, she was there for both the few high times and many low times. She had seen him at his highest, and she had been there watching silently during his lowest moments. Fear gripped the blonde's chest as he stared at the woman's face before him, hoping beyond all hope to find some trace of deceit or malice in her features, so that he could disprove the terrifying accuracy of the words she just uttered. However, there was nothing but truth emanating from the fox woman, a trait he rarely ever saw, and Naruto found himself more confused than ever. How can this be? This must be a trick, she wants to escape, and nothing more. I can't trust you, Naruto finished aloud, even though his thoughts bounced off the walls around him like faint echoes. They weren't enough to annoy the blonde, but it did remind him of his vulnerability and managed to make him feel incredibly small in the presence of the demon lady. To someone like you, trust is something earned and is not given lightly, no matter how hard you may try to believe otherwise. And as a token of good faith and a step towards earning your trust, I believe I should tell you that it was I who saved your life, Kyuubi said to Naruto, and by the almost pained look on his face, she managed to read him again. Why? What do you have to gain by saving my life? Wouldn't your freedom be assured if I died and the seal was broken? Naruto asked as he recalled hazy images of the event that transpired before he found himself here or adrift in the Crimson Sea. Yes and no, if you were to die, I would be taken along with you, and we would be judged as one soul by Kami himself. My soul would drag yours to hell, or Makai, and from there, I would be able to escape after losing a substantial amount of power. Thus, leaving you stranded in Makai with half my power and no way to defend yourself from the many demons who live up to your interpretation of them, Kyuubi answered as Naruto gulped at the thought of being left in hell, alone. However, young one, I chose to save your life because despite the circumstances, you are immortal. I have come to respect. You, like the fourth Hokage before you, would give anything to this village, and that type of devotion is to be admired, Kyuubi answered, and once again her aura exhibited nothing other than truthfulness to the cautious blonde, as much as Naruto hated to admit it. Kyuubi had proven to be more truthful and forthcoming than all the citizens in Konoha put together, and she was the only person who actually gave him a straight answer when he asked for one. Let's say for some reason I believed you when you said that, how exactly did you save me if the seal shattered? Naruto asked, recalling more and more of the prior night's escapades. He could still feel the cold bite of the kunai's blade from when Mizuki stabbed him, as well as the searing pain that followed after the hot surge of Yauki overflowed within him and burned his chakra coils inside and out. I could get into all the details now, but I won't, as we can go over the specifics in detail another time. However, I will say that only because of some extraordinary abilities your part were you able to survive your system's purging, as well as begin able to adapt the sundered seal, so that you could allow me to heal your body as you rested. In all my years of existence I've never seen anything quite like it, Kyuubi answered Naruto, leaving the boy irritated that he hadn't gotten the answer he wanted. However, he did manage to tie the Kyuubi into at least one more conversation by her word alone. Since when does talking to the fox mean anything to me? Naruto asked himself, and noting that he could stop his thoughts from broadcasting if he concentrated. So you saved me, but that still doesn't mean I can trust you, Naruto countered. He was a bit irritated. Kyuubi dodged his initial question, but he figured that he could probably get the rest out of her one time or another, seeing as their souls were bound together until their judgment. I suppose it doesn't, Kyuubi added compliantly. Her voice wasn't accusing, in fact it had almost an airy tone to it, as if she was politely disagreeing with him, rather than trying to plead a case. Once, the demon fox struck Naruto as out of the ordinary. She completely defied all the stereotypes he had consciously and subconsciously used to define her. She isn't sadistic, conniving, and deceitful, she seems more human than the rest of the bastards in the village, even Naruto concluded, unaware that his thoughts were being overheard by the demon war mistress across from him. As humble as his words were, Naruto had no idea what those simple words meant to Kyuubi. People told Naruto for as long as he could remember that he was all those things he listed, and up until recently, he sometimes considered himself all of those things, but by simple reason that Kyuubi wasn't all those things, he inadvertently defended her from the words of the ignorant villagers. The simple, unintended but honest gesture made Kyuubi feel somewhat secure about herself, a feeling that had been absent from her for over dozens of millennia. Being the small blonde as he continued to contemplate where they stood with one another, or more specifically if he really put any stock in her words, Kyuubi relented that it felt nice to be protected. Not that she would ever admit it aloud, as she loathed the thought of being reliant on someone else, but she couldn't muster up the energy to hate the blonde for what he did. Part of her reasoned it was because she had seen his life through his eyes and that she had gained a sort of empathy for the boy. Another part of her figured that whenever he did it, he wasn't trying to fulfill some sexist role, and the last and biggest part of her realized that Naruto did it because he was Naruto, a person who could see past all pretenses and find out the truth, and whatever it amounted to, for himself. However, I believe trust can be earned, and out of good faith, if you hear my story, I will concede to whatever decision you make afterward, Kyuubi uttered, cutting through Naruto's thoughts. The blonde wanted to ask how he could trust she was telling the truth, but he realized how foolish he would sound. However, he knew in his heart of hearts that it was Kyuubi's aura, it being truthful as well as serious, that convinced him to agree to hear the woman. And what decision will that be? Naruto asked, conceding to the fact that he would listen to the demoness, however he would not be a fool. He wanted to weigh his options as he listened to the kitsune's argument so that he could have a better feel of the situation when it finally came time to make his decision. Whether to dissolve barrier between the chakra and yaki current circulating throughout your brain, thus reconnecting your spirit to your mind and body, or if you think I'm untrustworthy, then you can finish us both and sacrifice yourself for the good of your village, Kyuubi explained, knowing how the situation must have sounded to the young one. It would make convincing him all the harder to trust her if it seemed like she was using his death as blackmail to let her live. However, she knew what she was getting into, and besides, the Kyuubi always liked a challenge. So, what are you going to explain to me? How you are a good demon, your reasons for attacking Konoha, or better yet, how you will grant me power beyond my wildest dreams, Naruto deadpanned before slightly snorting at his last comment. In a way, it was Naruto's way of showing his irritation for the perceived predicament Kyuubi had placed him in. However, Kyuubi could also tell it was Naruto's way of telling her that if that's what she was trying to say, she'd better do a damn good job of doing it, otherwise they would both be in Makai before even one of them could blink. Possibly, because all of those things can be explained in what I am about to tell you, however, to say that those things encompass the entire essence of my tale would be a severe misjudgment on your part. In truth, I am about to tell you about my greatest error, as well as the history of the world as you know it, Kyuubi explained before getting a perplexed look from Naruto. How is that going to convince me to trust you? Wouldn't telling me your faults be counterproductive to your goal? Naruto asked accusingly, wondering if this was just a game to Kyuubi, a game he may have already lost. Possibly, however, experience has taught me that learning the faults of a person is one of the only ways to truly understand someone, and it takes true understanding to be able to completely trust someone, Kyuubi explained evenly, once again throwing Naruto for a loop. Taking his silence as a cue to begin, Kyuubi began to morph the cell around her to help as a visual aid in retelling her tale. The cracked cobblestones contorted into red again and Naruto found himself wrapped in an aura of blue yet again, only this time, both he and the Fox Queen were visible, and Kyuubi stood not more than a few yards away, but encased in the vast redness around them. So that's what the red must have been, it was Kyuubi's chakra all along. Naruto concluded, and for once, he let awe settle in his mind. He always knew he had large reserves, nearing the level most elite Jonin reached during their prime, however, he was only a drop in the bucket compared to Kyuubi's ocean surrounding him. It was quite humbling in fact, and it added to the Kitsune Queen's testimony about gaining his trust, because surely a being of her power could have easily killed him with the way the seal's current state. The boy's intelligence is expanding, or more accurately, the constant influx of chakra and yaki in his body is starting to let his mind expand. His heightened intelligence is in fact his mind being able to process information normally, instead of struggling to churn out disjointed bits and pieces. However, to be able to piece the visual clues together so quickly without my direct inference is impressive, especially given his prior situation, Kyuubi thought, after once again noticing Naruto's thoughts. The blonde raised a curious eyebrow to the Yomi Queen when he realized that she was radiating an aura of pride mixed with satisfaction, as well as her normal honesty. Strangely enough, Naruto didn't find it foreboding because he got the odd feel that she was feeling that way because of him, and instead of being put on guard, the blonde relaxed as he listened intently to the red-headed woman's words. I am a being of perpetual chakra manifested into your realm, the Ninjenkai, as flesh and blood. However, before that I was a being of another realm, the spirit realm Tenkai, a spirit of sentience and great power serving under the High Lord Kami himself, Kyuubi began, as the sea of red shifted, becoming an exact replica of Tenkai. The gargantuan trees there put the forest of Konoha to shame, everything seemed crisper and cleaner, the whole world around him seemed to be beating, moving, and living to one harmonious heartbeat. Naruto stood rooted in spot, astounded at the marvels his senses were soaking in. This place was greater than anything he could think of in his wildest dreams, simply put, the place was heaven. Smiling at the boy's reaction, Kyuubi actually felt a bit relieved when Naruto's tension faded and the boy finally started to relax around her. She climbed the first hurdle, and now there were only dozens more ahead of her until she reached her goal. Here, in the land where the summoned creatures make their home, I, along with 8 the other of my brethren, were considered to be the right hand of Kami and one of the principal governing bodies of the plane. We were known as the Council of the Nine, and would be known as the Nine Biju if our home was threatened, Kyuubi continued before Naruto's gaze snapped back to her, a curious gleam accompanying the shining blue in his eyes. Your home, threatened? Isn't this place supposed to be where souls go to rest? Naruto asked, once again amazing himself that he had caught onto a detail that minute. As strange as it seemed, all the lectures he had endured, albeit half asleep, seemed to be popping up with astounding clarity at just the right times. It shocked him that he remembered the things he tried to forget with the same amount of detail as his most elaborate and praiseworthy pranks. Yes, Naruto, our home can be threatened, just as your home can be threatened. However, unlike Konoha who has to worry about other villages, the beings of Tenkai have a much bigger foe to worry about. Mainly, the inhabitants of Makai and the demon kings that led them, Kyuubi said, anger evident in her voice. She recalled many battles against the forces of Makai, however, none more violent and bloody than those fought against one more of the demon kings. The mindscape shifted and Naruto laid eyes on each prominent demon king and the sheer havoc they wrought. Their appearances varied wildly, ranging from hulking giants to lithe succubi with seducing smiles. However, despite their vast differences in aesthetics, they all had one thing in common, a large repulsive aura that radiated hate and bloodlust. The stark contrast of the images shook Naruto's core and it was then that it truly dawned on him how ancient and how powerful the female before him was. She had seen both the peace and harmony of Tenkai, as well as the hellish realities and bloodshed that accompanied the scarred battlefields of Makai. However, the revelation didn't strike fear within Naruto. No, the truth of the matter was Naruto could only look in awe at the Kitsune Queen, as her accomplishments belied her carefree attitude. Naruto then realized that the fox had done the same thing he had, buried his seriousness under a face of happiness, in order to suppress the pain of unsavory experiences. The parallel had reluctantly forced him to recognize that if anyone understood him, it was Kyuubi. Sounds like you loved that place, Naruto murmured quietly, thinking if Kyuubi was anything like him, Tenkai must have been her Konoha. With all my heart, but the truth is that it is because of my mistake that I am forever banished from my home, Kyuubi continued with a sad smile. Her aura couldn't be explained by anything other than forlorn, and Naruto could understand, because if he was ever banished from Konoha, he doubted he would know what to do with himself. Why? What could possibly banish you, one of the highest powers in your whole, from your home? Naruto asked, genuinely perplexed. In the moment of stupidity and pride, I sacrificed everything and abandoned my home, Kyuubi answered truthfully, not shocked at all when Naruto's aura turned from empathetic to enraged. How could she blame him, because in his eyes she had commented the one cardinal sin, and that was abandoning one's bonds. I can't believe I actually thought you were like me, Naruto uttered quietly. Although he had the strength to yell he didn't, this way, he could show the seriousness he buried, and with that seriousness, show Kyuubi how he really felt about her. Surprised are you? Well, as I said before, to truly trust someone you must know all of their faults, and I have revealed to you my greatest fault. Judging by your reaction, you feel that you can never trust me, but let me continue, and we'll see if the rest of my story won't change your mind, Kyuubi amended, thus getting Naruto's begrudging attention. I was foolish, plain and simple. My 8 brethren and I had sealed, killed, or otherwise neutralized all the demon kings save for one, the Tengu King. The Tengu King was in a class of his own who was possibly strong enough to turn the tides against us. His comrades were either dead, sealed, or far too injured to be of any help, and because of that we thought we had him cornered. Little did we know that we were just playing our distinctive roles in his twisted puppet show, because if the Tengu King was anything, he was crafty. He saw into our hearts almost as well as Kami himself, then again he was the first being in all of creation, as well as the first to turn his back on Kami, an example we would in our pride soon follow, Kyuubi stated before pausing, and visage of her greatest downfall appeared around the young blonde. So that is the Tengu King. Naruto concluded as he stared into the cold, calculating eyes of a human male. Humanoid would have been a more accurate statement. The being's eyes were black like coal and held a glint of sharpness within them that reminded the blonde of polished obsidian. His body, although lithe, was a tightly coiled massive of muscle that not only looked as if it could lift the heaviest of demons with ease, but could manage to make it look as graceful and effortless while doing it. Adorned on his back were proud wings that reached out as wide as he was tall, making him larger than he really was. Not that it mattered, seeing as his intimidating aura did it for him, for it managed to make the air around him seem as suffocating as water. Noting the beads on his neck, as well as the fan in one of his hands and the blade in the other, Naruto could only stare as the man lifted off the ground with the slightest flapping of his wings, before hovering in front of the 9 biju, guy flitting in the wind that his wings were producing. He called to the darkness in our hearts, playing to our pride and using our naivety to lead us to our destruction, Kyuubi continued on, as Naruto listened intently to the words the Demon King was saying. His voice was seducing and his tone commanded power, and before the 9 knew it, there they were, agreeing to his claims that they had run Tenkai without Kami. That his help wasn't needed. That they were gods themselves. We were like children really, even in all our millennia of being. We were too young to really understand what was happening, and like the puppets we followed him to Makai, forsaking our bonds to pursue a position we rightfully thought was ours. We had no idea how wrong we were, Kyuubi concluded shamefully as the mindscape played out the following scenes. The Tengu's prayer beads split and hovered around him in a circle as if possessed. The 9 beads flashed with a blinding amount of Yauki before binding themselves into each of the respective Biju. Slowly, each of their heavenly forms began to corrupt into the demons they were known as to this day, each sporting their respective tails and each becoming twisted by a power they truly didn't understand. Thus was the birth of the demon Biju, and thus was the birth of Kyuubi no Kitsune, the Yomi Queen. After our defection, the war between Makai and Tenkai raged with renewed passion. Makai had 9 new generals to command their armies, while the forces of Tenkai had lost its governing body, as well as its strongest frontline soldiers. In the midst of the chaos, the Tengu king managed to create an opening in the barrier that blocked the war from spilling into Ninjenkai, and thus the battle moved there was well, Kyuubi said as the results of that filled the mindscape. The sky was black from massive amounts of residual Yauki flitting in the air, the earth itself scarred from the clashing forces, and the blood of the fallen pooled into the wounds, forever spoiling the ground beneath it. The age of chaos, it was from this age that ninja were given birth to protect the people from the horrors of that era. This was the era before hidden villages and records from this time have all been lost. I never suspected it would have started like this, Naruto commented, thinking of how well that boded for Kyuubi's argument. The woman was being truthful, even painfully so, and for the most part her truth wasn't helping her case for why he should trust her. Well, at least at first glance, but with the more he heard and the more she shared, Naruto found that he could read the fox woman easier and easier, thus making it harder and harder for him to hate her when he saw all the emotions that were coursing through her, underlying each painful and shameful experience. True. This was the age of warring states for you humans, where demonkind ran almost unabated throughout Ninjenkai, killing, looting, and plundering the land with their taint. It was during this time that the human race was forever altered as demon blood slowly began to mix into the human world, creating the first Kekkei Genkai, Kyuubi explained, much to the shock of the blonde. The belief that all the special powers that he saw throughout Konoha were through a direct relation with some sort of demon or another. The irony of the situation did not elude him, and for everyone that accused him of being a demon may have very well suffered the same fate as he did. I see the irony is not lost on you, but during all of this madness, the avatars of Tenkai finally came up with a solution to both end the war with Makai and purge the evil that tainted the human realm. They would seal the Biju and thus judge the betrayers. The plan, although simple in theory, would span over many ages, reaching far beyond the warring era and into this era, thus ending with my sealing. However, much transpired between the execution of the plan and its completion. One such thing was the binding of Tenkai's warrior clans to you humans, or to put it simple, create the first of the summon contracts. With it, Tenkai's warriors were able to create proxy bodies to not only to combat us Biju and our followers without risk of dying, but now they could also teach humans the ability to mold chakra and with it put their plan in motion. It was from that plan and those contracts that the first ninja were born, and with that, it spelled the doom for much of the demon's invading force, Kyuubi said, before pausing and watching as Naruto silently assimilated all the information. If the boy didn't believe any of it, he didn't voice it, all he did was continue to stare and the flashing images on the walls whilst piecing together his thoughts silently. Taking his silence as cue to continue, Kyuubi shifted the image yet again, only this time the images were in Makai, and specifically on that of the Tengu king. Unknown to us, Makai's main fighting force, our fearless king was sitting behind the front lines plotting against us all. Despite all the pretenses he put up, he knew that Makai had no chance of winning against Tenkai once the humans started summoning the heavenly guardians to the human plane. How could we? Our bodies took damage, no matter how many skill, well their bodies were only projected onto the battlefield. We may have had the power advantage, but it was a war of attrition, and our forces were constantly dwindling. However, he kept that fact rather well hidden and instead let us run special missions to capture the few humans who were the original holders of the summon contracts. Even this was a few centuries after the war began, it came as a shock to me and my colleagues that they were still alive. So, the 9 of us set out, each of one moving to capture one of these humans. However, the reason these humans were still alive was because the contracts they signed were different than the signing rituals today. For instance, a fox summoner today would only have to sign the fox contract and they would be able to summon foxes, bar the boss, because the position is still incumbent. However, back then the first summoner had to tie his soul to his souls as they did to him. This resulted in an effect similar to when demon blood infiltrated the human gene pool. Kekkei Genkai, this time of divine origin, were born. These humans would go on to sire children, and those children would spread their bloodline limits through the gene pool, much like the demons did centuries before them, until their bloodline limits were firmly established on Ninjenkai. At the time, the massive horde that once compassed the Makai army dwindled to about half of its original size, and of the 9 generals, only 5 remained including myself, so with the introduction of these newer bloodline limits, the battle took a turn for the worse. The average infantry demon could easily best a full-grown man and put up a fight against a partial trained ninja, but with bloodline limits of demonic and heavenly origin everywhere, the likelihood of a demon actually being able to kill a small child dropped considerably. Over the next few decades, the forces of Makai were beginning to be pushed back as we generals were scrambling to find the last of the original contract holders, all the while being hunted and sealed ourselves. Finally, after the sealing of the Hachibi, I managed to catch a break and catch the last remaining contract holder. He was the leader of fearsome clan of warrior monks, whose frightening control over chakra gave them mastery over both human and demon energies. However, their eyes are what stood out the most, since their eyes were as blank as the Hyuga that would eventually settle in this land, as they were their ancient ancestors, Kyuubi revealed, not surprised when Naruto looked up at her in shock. You mean to tell me that you captured the very first Hyuga? And that all bloodline limits are of either demonic or divine origin? Although it would make sense, seeing as people with Kekkei Genkai are normally a lot stronger than the rest of us, but how would you tell the difference between a divine bloodline limit and a demonic one? Naruto asked, yet again taking a profound interest in what Kyuubi was telling him. It's not clear and cut as I'm about to tell you, but generally, demonic bloodline limits affect the elements of nature somehow, whereas divine bloodline limits affect the body, altering it somehow to house a distinct advantage or trait that they gained from their contract. However, there is one clan that is a mixture of both, and that clan lives here in Konoha today. That clan is the Uchiha clan, Kyuubi added, only to get a piercing look from the blonde. She, of all things, knew of the boy's feeling for the clan. However, after hearing this, his opinion for the clan may change forever, and, all things considered, it would probably be for the worse. Continuing from where I left off, I was the last Biju general alive, and I just completed our task mission of capturing all of the contract holders. None of us knew what our leader was looking for when he demanded we retrieve them or what he did with them once they were captive. All we were told was that they would be the tools to end the war as we knew it. That day our transgression caught up with me as it did my kin, only I would pay a price far worse than that of my brethren, Kyuubi muttered as the mural around them told the story. Naruto watched the scene play out as a stony-faced Kyuubi looked on in silence. The man, blank-eyed and regal, stood defiantly in face of the great Tengu, however slowly but surely he was tortured and twisted by the demon's Yaki. His old body became young once again, and his humanity was all but lost. The Tengu king had possessed a new body. The now possessed man turned his eyes to past Kyuubi with a wicked grin as his aura flared, rooting the demon-innocent spot. It was then I realized my folly. I was all alone in the face of the strongest demon ever. And even though his Yaki was decaying the holy bonds that kept him alive, he still had more than enough power to subdue me and then carry on with the rest of his plan, Kyuubi said, and for the first time she turned her eyes away from the depictions. Naruto continued to look on curiously before it dawned on him. Bile built up in his stomach when he saw the insane but powerful Tengu-possessed man stand over the prone and defenseless Kyuubi before descending down on her, and the images go black. Naruto was smart enough to know what happened, and seeing as how the age-old demon repressed the memory, the ancient wounds were still fresh in her mind. That bastard. How could he do that to one of his own followers? I can't believe him, I'll rip him apart if I ever, but with that Naruto paused. When did this protective feeling for the one who ruined his life worm into his head? It was then he realized that what Kyuubi had said was starting to make sense. The more he found out about her, the more he was letting himself trust her. Fuming slightly, in irritation of the Tengu's actions, but yet not of the revelation, Naruto continued to listen as the mural changed yet again. Fleeing from Makai as soon as I gained consciousness, it was then I realized that I was truly trapped. Because of my betrayal, I could no longer go to Tenkai for aid, and because of the Tengu king, hiding in Makai was out of the question. So I was in Ninjenkai, stranded and carrying a child that was being mutated by the Tengu's Yaki. It was then that I realizing that this was his goal from the beginning. I cursed my foolishness and I cursed my pride, but above all else, I cursed that damn Tengu. However, cursing would not set things straight, so I did the only thing I could do. I disguised myself as a human and let the Makai army crumple on top of itself. With no leadership to guide them, the demons began to fight amongst themselves, making it easier for humans and the allies from Tenkai to finish the war, and in the confusion, I was successfully able to disappear. I took the name Kasumi as I wandered, never staying anywhere long enough for anyone to discover who I was or what I had done, and so I explored the world I had once set out to conquer. Time passed, and the child carrying my blood and the blood of the Tengu-possessed Hyuga was born, and even though I knew the child carried some significance to the Lord of Hell, I couldn't bring myself to kill him. I suppose the Tengu planned for that, knowing that as a mother I could never kill my own child, but I wasn't going to let him win at whatever he was planning. So I hid the child away, utterly erasing as much of the Tengu's presence on his child as I could. The process drained me to the point where I needed rest, and from then on, I slept until the events that led to our fateful meeting, Kyuubi finished, as the scene changed once again, showing the picture of Kyuubi's child after the change. The once winged half-demon was now human. His body was lithe like his father's and his hair black as coal, however the tainted aura around him was all but gone, hidden away by Kyuubi's doing, and unlike his father, he received a gift from his mother. His eyes were like that of blood, almost matching Kyuubi's perfectly if it weren't for the three-point star in the center. Many things happened while I slept. The era of chaos ended and the land settled into peace, long since forgetting the hectic age before it, as well as the demons that wreaked havoc over the land. During that time, my child sired a line of fearsome warriors. Warriors blessed by the Kekkei Genkai of heaven, but cursed by the Tengu's twisted chakra. Over the generations, my disguise slowly faded from line to line, until it came to both the attentions of both leaders of Tenkai and the Tengu king, that these warriors were in fact the clan they were looking for. The Tengu made his move and contacted his children directly, while Tenkai contacted me in my sleep, offering me the one thing I wanted most. My redemption. Kyuubi paused yet again and let the motion pictures do their work. Watching as Tengu kings twisted the brightest star of the Uchiha into a monster, and his subsequent defeat by the first Hokage, Naruto, could only wonder how this played into the Kyuubi's attack. Tasked with destroying my own children, I at first resisted and the scene you just saw was the outcome. That was my tormentor's first attempt to carry out his plan, and the destruction it wrought rested solely on my shoulders. Reluctantly, I took my task and made my way to my children's current home, Konoha. Naruto could only watch silently, as Konoha caused as much destruction as possible on the way towards his home. Before he would have thought that it was a mindless demon enjoying the pain and destruction it could cause on a whim, but Naruto now knew better. It was Kyuubi trying to warn those in her path to leave that she only had one target, and that target meant the most to her. She skipped over the attack, and Naruto thanked the fox silently for sparing him the image of seeing his home destroyed, and the blonde was impassively as the fourth Hokage sealed the great beast into him, leaving he and the fox Biju in their current situation. As you can see, my mission failed and I suppose that this is my penance for my transgression. However, I know that he is still out there and with me in here, his taint will never leave this plane. So Naruto, I ask you now, do you see my reasons? Do now understand that you can trust me? Kyuubi asked as the images slowly shifted back into the visage of the damp seller, leaving both Naruto and Kyuubi standing opposite of another. Yes, I see your reasons, and although lengthy and complex, I can understand why you did it. Konoha was just caught in the crossfire of a conflict too old for it to comprehend, a conflict you started, Naruto said accusingly. Kyuubi flinched on the inside, the blonde was right, but her pride would be damned if she let him know he affected her. Yes, this is my fault and I shoulder full responsibility. However, that doesn't answer the other question, can you trust me? Kyuubi asked again staring hard at the blonde in front of her. Naruto stood silently as he weighed his options. On one hand, he could trust the one demon responsible for much of the bloodshed and strife in the world, whether it be his, demon, heavenly, or he could condemn them both and see what would happen to the world without Kyuubi to interfere any longer. With that in mind, Naruto made his decision and the mindscape went dark. No sooner than when the words left the Hokage's mouth, Naruto vitals began to plummet. The device monitoring his brain's chakrayaki activity began to flare uncontrollably. Is the demon trying to take control over Naruto? The Hokage wondered for. He threw a worried look to Iruka, who returned it with twice the intensity. If anyone would feel the impact of Naruto's death, it would be his academy instructor, and above and beyond everything else, his older brother. The chakra and yaki spiked, and Naruto's vitals all died. Apparently Naruto took the Kyuubi with him, sacrificing himself to save the village that scorned him. As noble as that was, neither of the two surrounding the boy felt elated. No, a haze of sadness washed over them for Konoha had lost that which was most precious to them, the one carrying on the will of fire. Cursing his luck, Sarutobi swore if had one more chance, he would tell Naruto everything, starting from birth and spanning all the way to whom his parents were. He owed it to them, and most of all to Naruto, to accomplish at least that, but as it stood he wouldn't get a chance. Beep beep. The device monitoring the boy's heart came to life once again, startling both shinobi. It had almost been a whole minute since Naruto's vitals died, and now they were all starting to come back to life, getting stronger and stronger with each passing moment. Hope filled the two, well at least until they looked at the flickering monitor that showed the chakrayaki activity in Naruto's brain. The packet of yaki that had been in Naruto's head spread, encompassing it as it had his body only hours earlier. Fear gripped the hearts of both shinobi as their worst fears were coming true. The Kyuubi was returning, and to their knowledge, it had come back from the grave after Naruto had given himself to destroy it. The boy's eyes fluttered open, revealing two deep blue eyes before a feral smirk spread on his face. The two men stood ramrod straight, trying to will themselves into the ready position, but it was to no avail. Memories of the beast's power resurfaced into the forefront of their minds, paralyzing them at that one crucial moment. "Why so stiff, Jiji-san, you aren't going to die on me, are you?" Naruto uttered sarcastically. The two shinobi relaxed as confusion spread through them. That wasn't what they were expecting. "Why are you two looking at me like that? Is there someone wrong with my face?" Naruto asked, before turning his body and setting his feet on the ground, not noticing that he came in contact with it far sooner than he normally did, before pitching his body forward onto his feet. He got about halfway there before his body collapsed over his new legs, and Naruto got a close inspection of how clean the hospital floors were. "Defiantly not what I was expecting," an amused Iruka thought as he helped his surrogate brother into a wheelchair before following after the Hokage. They had much to discuss. The world as Naruto knew changed drastically. Literally everything that he once perceived as fact was irrevocably altered by his enhanced senses. Things like scents in the air and hues of color, which never bothered him before, now stood out in a great amount of detail and contrast. Hell, he could go as far to say that his old senses were like night to this new one's day, a day in which all that was hidden from him had been illuminated. Feeling no end to the intellectual stimulation via his new senses, Naruto was almost relieved when they arrived at the Hokage's office, and the vastness of the world seemed to shrink down to one office. Absorbing in all he could of the office in one go, Naruto felt his curiosity settle down and finally give his mind a chance to relax. It would not be for long, because once the smell of fresh tobacco hit his nose, he knew he was in for a long talk. "Naruto, I need you to recount everything that you experienced while you were asleep," the Hokage asked. To anyone else, the statement would have sounded like the demand of a responsible leader trying to ensure the safety of his home. However, to Naruto, the Sarutobi head's words were like that of a worried grandfather trying to ensure that he was alright. The thought brought a bright smile to the blonde's face, one that would eerily remind the two around him of the boy's father. "That comfortable you two, because a lot happened while I was in my head, but for the most part, Kyuubi's story is the most important and her tale will probably answer many of the questions you have now," Naruto said, noting the surprise he not only saw on his elder's face, but also smelled in their change of scent. "The Kyuubi is a girl," Iruka shouted, much to the amusement of his little brother. What if Naruto has gift of fire council bashing harem? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.